Alrighty, good evening, everybody. If you don't mind standing with us, we'll go ahead and do the Pledge of Allegiance, and then we have a brief moment of silence for us to gather our thoughts, and then we will start our meeting. So, Director Jones, if you can kick us off. Alrighty, thank you very much. So for this evening, you will see that we have a nice new timer clock here. That's rather large. So we are trying to get ourselves more streamlined and organized here so that when we do have presentations, the board can help stay on track, the presenter can help stay on track. We know a lot of times you get into your information and we want to hear that information, but we also want to make sure that we're keeping our meetings timely as well. So for those of you that will be presenting this evening, you will have the clock here for all of us to keep ourselves on track. And Director Jones is the arbiter of the clock. So we will go ahead and get started. Number one, Board Appreciation Month recognition.
All right, so it is Board Appreciation Month, and I have a recognition resolution that I want to read off real quick. So it says, every January, the Mesa County Valley School District 51 administration, staff, parents, and students recognize our Board of Education members during School Board Recognition Month. Serving on the Board of Education is an honorable, selfless service involving countless hours participating in meetings, communicating with constituents, reviewing proposals, and making tough decisions, all in the best interest of our students and families. School board members are elected to sit in trust for their communities and are charged with meeting the community's expectations for the public education of their students. Board members receive no pay for their service, so deciding to serve on a school board truly takes an innate belief that making a difference in the lives of children is worth the public scrutiny that may come with the title. School board members are entrusted with some of our community's most prized possessions, our children and our money. They are accountable to the community for operating schools that support student achievement. They're responsible for being good stewards of tax dollars, providing a clear and shared vision of our school's public education, setting high standards, and requiring effective and efficient district operations. We are proud of the work of our school board and the work they do and their commitment to the continuous education and training on issues related to student achievement. The elected school board members deserve recognition and thanks for their countless hours of service to public education and the children of Mesa County. I urge our community to join me in recognizing the dedication and hard work of our local school board members and their commitment to sharing the district's vision to engage, equip, and empower each and every student each and every day. So on behalf of our staff, students, and parents, I hereby declare our appreciation to the Mesa County Valley School District 51 school board members and proclaim the month of January 2023 to be School Board Recognition Month. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'll just say, on behalf of senior leadership and all the folks that get to interact with y'all a lot more often than maybe others, we do appreciate all that y'all do and putting our students first and for helping us lead the school district. And yeah, it's been a really good experience, and so appreciate y'all's leadership through all this. We gave everybody a nice little gift because, as we said earlier, you don't get paid, but we can pay you in candy. So there's a gift for y'all there, and Bridget helped get that for us, so appreciate Bridget for doing that. And then we'll maybe recognize y'all again in a couple weeks with something else. So, but thank y'all.
Thanks, Dr. Hill. All right, we now have our United Way campaign drawings. Need our drum roll.
All right, we'll give it a run. All right, I echo Dr. Hill's sentiments. You guys, thank you so much for your service. It helps so much to have people who are dedicated like you that care about the kids and care about our staff and the community. Thank you very much. My name's Corey Hafey. I'm the principal at Appleton Elementary, the famous bookworms, and I'm co-chair of the District 51 United Way Pledge campaign. To my left here is Angela Christensen. She is the D51 Foundation Executive Director, and she's going to help me with the presentation a little bit tonight. Okay, so the D51 United Way Pledge Campaign is an exciting annual event where D51 employees partner with United Way of Mesa County to help fund 42 programs and 27 local nonprofit agencies. These programs serve about 50,000 people in Mesa County and address a variety of social problems focused on health, education, and self-reliance. Our D51 employees are the largest yearly organization donor to the pledge drive and have given somewhere in the neighborhood of $1.3 million in donations since the partnership began. That's your custodians, your cafeteria staff, your coaches, your administrators, your teachers, your grounds and maintenance, and every other D51 department is represented in donating some of their hard-earned money to United Way of Mesa County. They do this because they know it positively impacts the kids and the families that go to our schools. But before I get to all the good news about this year's results and what a great partnership it is, I'd like to recognize several people who made this partnership possible. Jessica Newman, she's my co-coordinator for several years, and she's the West Middle School Assistant Principal. April Hart, our D51 Office of Volunteers and Community Partnerships, is behind the scenes organizer. April does an amazing job of taking care of a lot of details. Zeb Miracle is here tonight. He's right here. He's the United Way of Mesa County Executive Director. And with him is his administrative and donor manager, Kira Clark. They do such an amazing job for our county and for the people here. It's just incredible. You probably can't measure just in dollars what they do for everyone. And then obviously Dr. Angela Christensen is here too, and she helps with this a lot, and she's going to give some words here in just a moment. And we couldn't do this drive without the D51 building coordinators. There's 52 of them that run each building, their program, and we couldn't do it without them. They put in a lot of time and effort, and so it's a big project. It really is. It takes in a lot of people to do this and make it go well. So, all right, here's the good news. 63 more D51 employees supported the pledge drive than last year. So we increased our number. That equals 843 generous D51 employees who donated $74,381.50 back into the community. And that is amazing. So I'm just going to say thank you for that. And I'm going to turn it over to Angela for a little bit.
Okay, thank you so much, Corey. I want to just begin by thanking all the staff members who have designated their United Way donation specifically to the D51 Foundation. That's one of the options that they have. And to celebrate this, it has made such a substantial difference. We have received, the foundation this year in particular has received over $9,000 of their funds of the total amount, and that is a big deal, and it will go a long way to help fund our mission. And part of our mission is to raise funds for academic growth and achievement and to promote outreach to benefit kids and the community. I definitely want to take a moment though right now to highlight the work that Corey Hafey has done for years and years, and his partner, Jessica Newman. Without their enthusiasm, and I see them at the staff meetings, and without their enthusiasm and motivation, we would not see this. And so I'd just like to take a moment to recognize Corey and Jessica. It's been my pleasure to work with the United Way, and one thing I'd just like to highlight for a moment is something that we've been really promoting throughout the school district, and that is the Mesa County Imagination Library. Some of you might be familiar with this with Dolly Parton and her Dollywood Foundation, but it is a really wonderful opportunity for any child in Mesa County from the ages of 0 to 5 to register to receive a book every single month. There are no strings attached, no income requirements, nothing like that. All that families need to do is go to imaginationlibrary.com, and that is run through our Mesa County United Way. So if you haven't heard about that, I would really encourage you to do that, and it's a joy to be able to celebrate that and that partnership, and you'll see more of that coming from the foundation.
All right, that is really good news. And to have a reading connection this year to Dolly Parton, and then with our school district, I mean, that is part of the reason why I think the number increased and number of employees participating as well. So we have some awards to give out. Every year we recognize the schools that had the highest increase in staff participation. And this year, the highest, and these folks get a plaque, by the way, a traveling plaque they get to have in their school for a year. So the elementary school that had the highest increase was Dos Rios, with an 80% increase in participation. So congratulations, Dos Rios. The middle schools, Book Cliff Middle School had a 27% increase. That's pretty exciting. And the high school was Valley High School. They had over 42% more employees participate this year than in the year prior. So that's great. And the office building that had the biggest increase was the Emerson building, with 16.5% more of folks participating. All right. And now we get to do some drawings. You guys got to help us out with this part. It's always a fun part of the year. So what we do here is, Angela will help me out here. So what we're going to do is we're going to, for every person that donated, and that is a classified employee that donated $5 per pay period, we choose 6 of the staff members from the classified ranks that donated this, and we will have you read their name off if you would like, and those folks win a day off, free day off of work. How about that? So these classified folks work really hard, and then they donate on top of that, and so we're going to reward them for, all right, we need 6 of those picked. And we'll collect those once you're done. We'll collect those so that Bridget has a good record of everybody. All right, if you guys don't mind reading off who you have, that'd be great.
In admin, I have Denise Cording Laird.
All right, great.
At Central High School, I have Danielle Mulkey.
All right, Daniel.
At BTK, Eva Geske.
All right.
From Thunder Mountain, Candy Fowler.
Right.
And from Central High School, Ann Bricker.
All right.
And from West Middle School, Kathy Sipes.
All right. Good. Okay, now you get to help out. You're choosing right now our 6 certified staff members. These folks had to donate at least $10 per pay period, and we choose 6 of them as well. So go ahead.
At Shellady, Brittany Wilms.
All right, Shelley.
At Mesa View, Cynthia Valdez.
Great.
Thunder Mountain, Lene Borden.
From Fruta 8-9, Ruth McKee.
From Appleton Elementary, Wendy McComb.
Yes.
And from the Compass Building, Elaine Buda.
All right. All right. We appreciate all those certified staff members donating. And now there are 3 administrative, just 3 administrative folks. These folks had to dedicate $20 per pay period. And we choose 3 of them to have a day off as well. All right.
Okay, from Central, Lance Seldine.
All right, Lance.
From Compass, Catherine Ebel.
Oh, yeah, great. All right.
Does that work?
Kathy's retired. All right.
Okay.
All right. You know what we're going to do? We're going to choose another one there, too. That's what we're going to do there. So, all right, let's try one more there. Even on the way out, Kathy was donating. Look at that.
No. Is there supposed to be 3?
It's supposed to be 3.
2, okay. So are you doing?
But we're going to do 4 because Kathy's, yeah.
So from Chipeta, we have Jamie Cairo.
Jamie, all right, great.
Appleton, Corey.
Nope. We got nope. Honestly, you got to redo that. I am not kidding. I'm not kidding.
That was,
Have him pick a different.
that was
Seriously,
great.
have him pick a different.
Okay.
That's not right. That's funny.
That, what are the odds?
Rigged.
Oh, pick a different one.
Emerson, Jennifer Marsh.
Pick another one.
Oh, I love it.
That's great. Oh my.
That is fantastic. Hey, well, the awards aren't done yet. awards aren't done yet. We have some
Yeah.
some D51 Foundation awards as well.
Yeah, and I just quickly want to highlight, we are in the midst of our White Ice celebration season. We'll be having our 11th White Ice celebration, and I'm very pleased. This is the first showing of our poster for White Ice. And as you can see, there are a lot of sponsors, and we have increased sponsorship every year. This year is by about a remarkable over 20% increase from last year, which in my mind just really highlights the wonderful things that are happening in our school district, and our businesses are taking notice, and it's just fantastic. Our event will be on Saturday, February 4th at 7 o'clock. And so one of the ways that we help encourage our staff members to attend is by offering different incentives for their participation in noting the foundation for their United Way designation. So for the building that raises the most money for the D51 Foundation, they will receive 6 White Ice tickets, and that is BTK.
All right, BTK.
For the building with the highest number of foundation donors, they will receive 6 tickets, and that is Palisade High School.
All right, Palisade.
And we have 2 folks that will be drawn from all of the donors to receive 2 tickets to the White Ice. So I'm going to pass those around. Okay,
Right.
over here.
From Rocky Mountain, Tyler Jones.
All right.
From Grand Junction High School, Christine Spillane.
All right. Good. Well, we just want to thank you guys again for your service and recognizing you guys just have done such a good job supporting the school district and supporting United Way. This is a great partnership. It helps our entire community, helps our kids. This is a great thing that we do every year. And so we just appreciate you guys, and we appreciate Zeb and Kira. Thank you very much. And have a happy 2023.
All right, well, thank you very much. That was kind of fun. Changes things up a little bit for the board to draw some names. All right, we have our Grand Junction High School construction update. Come on down. I know, we left you two by yourself.
Oh, you, Micah, you got this.
They're coming. All right, I believe this is the last slide, actually. I need to. Yeah, the clock started. Oh, can I control it here? Oh, perfect. Great, thank you. Well, it's good to see you all. I believe I've met most of you, but my name is Micah Adams. I'm a project manager for Dynamic Program Management, or the owner's rep on the project. With me, I've got Peter Eisenogle with the Blythe Group, the architect, and Mark Litzen, the project manager with FCI. So we'll hop into it. As far as overall schedule goes, there's no update. Everything's tracking well. As far as budget goes, we've got about $130 million committed out of the $144 million budget, with about $23 million expended through the end of November. We're just starting to get invoices and pay applications for the month of December, so that will be going up here soon. As far as percentage complete, number of days, we're about 25% complete, and budget about 16%. Like I said, that will be increasing again here soon. And that lag is pretty typical in a construction project, and that will the lag between the number of days completed and the project budget completed. So we expect that budget number to start catching up as things ramp up on site. So here's a couple interesting construction metrics we've got for you. Right now we're hitting about 92 people on site per day, which is pretty exciting. When we worked on Orchard Mesa Middle School, At the peak, we had about 150 people on site. And so 92 people on site each day this early on in the project kind of gives you a picture for what we expect down the road. There's been about 60,000 square feet of concrete floor slabs poured already. About 316 construction material test reports. About 35,000 concrete masonry unit blocks laid. And about 405 tons of steel placed as of last week. So things are moving along really well. Things that were recently completed, bid package 6, that's for the 700 building and the existing gym remodels. That design was completed and has been sent out to subcontractors for finalized pricing. And the walls and roof structure for the gym have been completed. They're going through and detailing now. And the slabs for pretty much the entire classroom wing have been poured. So in progress, we're just finalizing some design for the soccer fields, tennis courts, as well as the furniture. Construction-wise, as you can see in that picture, we've got the structural steel going on for the classroom wing, starting on the west half, then we'll move to the east half next. But it's really exciting to go out and just see that structure in place. I don't know if you have driven by recently or not, but I suggest you do. We've also got ongoing utility installations underground. Upcoming, we're doing more furniture design meetings. Actually, this last week, we just had an abatement walkthrough. There will be some asbestos abatement in the existing high school summer of 23. So we'll be selecting a contractor to do that work here shortly. We expect the pricing for bid package 6 to come back mid-January. And we've got ongoing utility work in the alley there east of the project. Here's just a couple more pictures of progress. You can see masonry installation, preparation for concrete there in the building, the structural steel, as well as the basement there in the auditorium coming together. That's the update that we have at this time. Do you have any questions? All right. Well, thanks, guys.
The weather had any good or bad effects so far, or?
Not.
It was fun to walk around today. You can probably still see mud stains on my pants. But
Yeah.
If
If you can see, my boots are pretty muddy. It's muddy out there. They're still moving along pretty well. It's slowed them down a little bit here lately, but nothing that's an issue. So.
Just on that original slide you had up there that had the 144.5, I just think it's important to remember that the ask that we had for the community was actually only 115 because of the savings from previous bonds that we put towards this, and then the $10 million BEST grant that the district got. So we're getting $144.5 million state-of-the-art high school, and we only had to ask for $115 million from the taxpayers. So I just don't want to lose sight of that.
Yeah, that's a great point. Thanks, Brian.
That's awesome.
Thank you, guys.
All right, now we'll move to our K-12 early release presentation.
Danny and I want to know if we can have their 5 minutes.
There was a little extra time on the table there.
Yes, Jeremiah, there are 3 of us. I did tell Danny, don't hit start yet.
No, I'm not. Oh, yeah. I'm queuing it up.
I said, Danny, they've got a timer. He said, God, I would have liked to have known that.
I should have been. Need to know that up front.
Hello. Happy New Year. I'm Jennifer Marsh. I think we all know each other. And I've got Danny.
Danny Medved, Director of Professional Learning.
And we have a building principal with us this evening as well. Jeremiah, you want to introduce?
Jeremiah Johnston for the middle school.
So we want to talk about early release. Early release right now is, as you know, at our elementaries, and it's our Friday. And we would like to start exploring. Actually, we've started to explore. We want to fill you guys in a little bit, and we still have some other additional steps that we need to go through to identify if this is a viable option or not to have a universal early release in our district. So that would be at all three levels, elementary, middle, and high. So the early release, we would make sure that we would envision that every school would be following these aims. And we've talked about, I've been in front of you guys and we've talked a number of times about our aims. And those are essentially our academic and our cultural goals, our aim 1 and aim 2 that every building has. And how would we ensure that these goals, not only for the district and our strategic plan goals, but also those building goals. And this would provide that opportunity for, and I'm sorry, I've got a hair that keeps sticking in my eye, that would provide opportunity for each of our buildings to be able to focus on these goals. So this is something, read a book, and we've been using this book a lot at our instructional level and bringing it to our buildings. It isn't the changes that will do you in, it's the transitions, and how are we managing transitions. So just to say that we're gonna decide to make the change you can talk about, but how do you manage what the transition looks like when you make that change? And in that book, there are 4 essential components to managing your transition. And that is, what is the purpose? Why did you make the change? What the picture? What would it look like? What would the outcomes look like? Then a plan, lay out a plan, a step by step, so everybody knows and understands what it looks. Why are we doing this? What does it look like? What is the plan to get there? And then player, what does each individual, from parents to students to teachers and at each level, what does each player, what is their role and what it would look like? Tonight we're going to talk about we're going to talk about purpose, and we're going to start laying out some pictures because we have some next steps. So why? What's our rationale? Why? We're going to talk about the purpose of early release, but why are we moving forward in talking to you and talking to other building principals to make sure that we're grounded, we have a good rationale to why. Obviously, we need a deeper ongoing focus on student academic and social emotional success, especially in our achievement group, our gaps that we know were those groups that have the largest gaps. That ongoing and in-depth time to collaborate without pulling people, staff out of buildings. It's hard. One, it's hard. Teachers don't want to leave their students, and the other, it's hard to find our subs. And make sure that we're focusing on all of our students, but especially our students that are struggling, and ensuring that they're meeting their potential. The opportunity for robust learning opportunities and those business and community connections, both with staff and with students, some of our older students. And that way to ensure that MTSS, or those multi-tiered support system, giving our teachers the opportunity to collaborate, come together. What are the strategies that they need to be using, and how are they using data to inform? So everything is always going to be data informed. And so how providing that time to meet the needs of our students. I'm going to go through the next slides pretty quick because I see our time is ticking. And as I would hope you would expect that we would talk about, there's got to be an alignment to the strategic plan. And so of course it does, with our prepared and supported staff and our prepared and supported students. This is data that I've already been shared with you guys, but I just want to remind you that we've got some growth, and we want to continue to maintain and sustain that growth. And in proficiency, your proficiency or growth precedes proficiency. Of course, you see we do have some that we keep growing and going upwards, and we want this time to allow and to continue for that growth.
And so, go ahead.
And I was just going to say, and I will be coming back towards the end of the month with our middle of the year data. So, but this is data you guys have already seen.
And so while our district-wide strategy is working, we showed you this back in our professional learning update in October. We know that our strategy is not being effective for some of our groups of kids. The good news is we know which groups of kids those are. Those are our students from poverty. Those are our multilingual learners, and especially our students with disabilities. As you can see here, this is reading. That purple line, 50th percentile, that's a year's growth in a year's time. And we, as well as all of our comparison districts, are falling short of that mark. That's a big part of the why behind this early release is these groups of learners. Similar for math, we're not hitting that year's growth for really any of these gap groups. And so these groups make up a big part of the rationale for early release. You've heard concerns expressed to you around attendance and student engagement as a board at times, so we wanted to just share kind of a middle of the year where we're at. Our leaders will see this data on Friday. Starting with attendance, when we think of those diverse groups of kids that aren't being as successful academically, this is our students with disabilities on the left. You can see back 2 years ago, we were at an 85% attendance rate for that group of learners. We're now down over 2%, under 83. Our students from poverty, similar trend. We've dropped over a percentage there, and our multilingual learners, we've dropped. Let's continue with this thread. Here's student engagement. As we think about behavior in our schools, we hear the stories. The numbers actually tell the truth too. At this same point last year, we had 705 exclusionary discipline referrals. That's in-school suspensions. We're up to 772. 881 last year. This one's a little shocking. We're at 1,152, so 400 more out-of-school suspensions. Some of our students have needs, and it's important. The only way we can respond to that problem is by knowing which learners they are. Unfortunately, the same groups of our learners that are struggling with academic proficiency are also having behavior challenges. And so you see here's our students with disabilities. Generally, you want to have that percentage of group match the number. So if 17% of our students have a disability, then 17% should be showing up with discipline referrals. Right now, that's 42% of our discipline referrals are students with disabilities. And that was in school as well out of school suspension there. And our number is holding pretty steady for the last 2 years. You can see our students from poverty, economic challenges, similar trend. They make up 33 or 32%, and they're representing over half of our discipline challenges. These are trends that have existed for some time. You can see right here, here's our students with disabilities who also have an economic challenge. They make up less than 10% of our population. They make up 25% of our discipline referrals right now. And so this just goes to say, you got to know that there's a challenge so you can respond to it. These are the groups of kids that need additional support from us. Here's a little good news for you. As a learning system overall, if you look at the far right, 22, 23, the green arrows, we are seeing a trend up with student engagement, with attendance district-wide. So as you saw that data before, those groups of learners that make up 20 to 30% of our district are carrying a disproportionate amount of the engagement challenges. And so another piece, and I apologize for the formatting, I think it changed when we moved over to PowerPoint. It wasn't that way in the Google slide, but 504s and students with disabilities. So we actually have more litigation related to 504s, that's American Disability Act, than we have with special education currently. And as we've talked with Patty Verdon has been studying this, there's really 4 big areas. Number one, our staff are ill-equipped. They don't know how accommodations are determined. They don't really know how to develop the plans, how to monitor the plans, nor is there time. And so 504s has kind of been an off the radar thing that's becoming more forefront. And that's a group that we believe early release would impact as well. And then lastly, if you see here, it's always good to compare yourself to other districts. And so what we have right here is comparison to other large districts across the state. And you'll see here that almost all of them have some form of early release. Josh, one of the consultants we work with for learning communities, has said early release would be a major game changer. Something to note, though, is that there's big variability in the frequency and the format. There's not like a common early release format. Many of the smaller to medium districts do run a 4-day week that has a large amount of professional learning in there. We're not advocating for that, but it's kind of a form of an early release. And then high-performing networks and groups of schools and districts tend to have this structure as a key part of what they do. So as we close this part and we think about why we think an early release is important.
So obviously, as we know, that moral obligation to do our best to serve and support our most impacted learners, that legal obligation to serve these groups, and that fiscal responsibility to do well and avoid litigation. But here's that opportunity for our teachers to come together and work together. They're the experts, and giving them that time during their work week to be able to meet the needs and the challenges that the data is just sharing where we've got issues. Now let's dig in and what do we need to do as a learning community to meet those challenges. So we want to study this concept or this idea of a D51 K-12 weekly Friday early release. We do want to keep it in line with elementary. We've gotten, as being part of the calendar committee, we've gotten a large amount of input and feedback that parents like that Friday. So we would not want to change that when we went universal. So that would include our middle schools and our high schools, and it would be on that Friday. So we need to develop that shared vision and outcomes in alignment with our strategic plan priorities, studying and developing models and designs that balance the school context and the district strategic plan priorities. Because we know not every building has the same context. And so while we all have the same large global goals, each one of our buildings need to be afforded that time and opportunity to meet them as their context and what their data says. Considering the logistical elements and implications, my word, I've been on vacation. Implications of moving to a system-wide early release. This is something that our families, our entire community, so our teachers, our students, and our families would need to know and understand. And what are those? What are the expectations for asking our community to release all students K-12 early on a Friday afternoon? So here again, you have back to our strategic plan with our vision on the bottom: engage, equip, and empower each and every student each and every day, which has our in the middle. We've talked about this so much, and we always keep that graduate profile in focus, in line. Why do we do what we do? So that our students leave our organization or our system prepared and ready for the next step. So how does this go with early release? How might a system-wide early release advance our strategic plan priorities and students' realization of the graduate profile in unique ways based on each school's context?
And so with that, we, as we laid this plan out, hang on here. There we go.
Okay.
Yeah. We're working off of a different deck. The deck's got switched, so we
They hear
apologize.
that, thank goodness,
They
all
hear
the
that.
time.
They do. Go ahead. Go ahead, boss.
So getting clear, those must-have elements. This is not in place of master schedule, common plan, learning community time that buildings have already built in their master schedules. Each school must have an explicit MTSS focus, that process and those protocols as one reoccurring element. The LC planning time, the learning community planning time, needs to be guided and outcome-based. Again, you can't have data informed without having what are those outcomes and how do we know we're making a difference. And those monthly and weekly, those cadence online outlines shared with site directors in our professional learning office. So it can't be a given that where everybody's doing it and this is, nope. What are your artifacts that are supporting when you're meeting, what you're talking about, and what are the roles? What is everybody doing during this time?
So as we look at some of those nuts and bolts, it's important that we think about what is effective professional learning. Going to a conference one time won't actually change anything. Effective professional learning is going to focus on where do we want to be with our students? Is it regular and ongoing? Is it relevant to an educator's practice? Is there some choice in there? Does it involve individual feedback so I can get better? And then am I collaborating with peers? And so as we think of those nuts and bolts, we wanted to name that our MTSS group for one of the groups in whole is actually a group that has struggled to have those elements. There's a lot of different reasons. Patty Verdon gave an update in December about this. What you can see here is really the desired outcome on the right side is that these departments, our student behavior department would like to see more of a focus on ongoing learning communities. They'd like to see a more systemic use of some of the great tools and platforms that we pay for and have. They'd like us to create space for our general education and special education collaboration. Generally, that doesn't happen the way that master schedules work. And there's a similar trend with our gifted and talented learners, as well as our multilingual learners. And so student services is actually one of the biggest groups, and those are the groups that we looked at the beginning that would benefit from an early release, okay? And so as we get ready to close, we actually wanted to look at what is it specifically that an early release would look like if we block this time. This was a prototype that we shared with school leaders, and you can see right here that week 1 and week 3 would be a focus on school culture. Really that student behavior element that we talked about, what are those practices and strategies to respond to some of these concerning behaviors? You'll see that the bottom pink in week 2 and 4 is called the kid talk. And that's where we sit down and we say, hey, how is Danny doing? He's really flared up. He was out of school suspension last week. It's a collective intervention that we can put in place for him. Do we need to bring in somebody from the district level to help coach into some of these skills? Weeks 2 and weeks 4 are a place for those ongoing data meetings to take place where we can calibrate. And so Jeremiah was actually going to share a little bit. That was just a prototype. It's been exciting to see our school leaders take this idea back to their buildings. And can you share a little, Jeremiah, about what this might be for Fruta?
Yeah. Well, thanks for letting me be here tonight. And I want to echo Dr. Hill and Mr. Heafy and just saying thank you for all you do. We feel you at the site level, your guidance and support, so thank you. Being lucky enough to be part of this committee has allowed me to be able to front load some of the concepts for our ILT in the building. And one of the things that comes up in education, as we all know, is money. But I think if you asked educators, maybe the most important currency is time. And so when we're having these conversations, creating this time, when we're having those conversations with our ILT, you can just see their faces light up. Like, hey, we could do this during that time. And have time to put general education teachers together in the same room with special education teachers on a regular basis, to have these talks like Dr. Medved was talking about, taking time for staff wellness, continuing these ongoing data meetings. And our staff really kind of took to it and was excited in these initial conversations. One of the things of note that I tweaked a little bit on mine was the hour and 45-minute template, taking 60 minutes and then taking 45 minutes. Just one thing from the site level to consider is it's really not an hour and 45 minutes once you get kids out of the building, once people finish up their after-school duties, once you get staff back in the building and they take care of their needs and you get everybody in the same place. So that's just a consideration from the site level that I would offer. But yeah, just the ability to have these deep, rich, ongoing, regular conversations instead of feeling like they get chunked out 4 times a year or quarterly or something like that. I think just the regularity in a system like this would be really advantageous and exciting for us at the site level.
So we're pretty much at our end with questions. Just want to give you a timeline. We've been working on this since October or November. We are now at the engaging the board and the community level, and schools continue to refine what a possible plan would be. January through May is really site leadership teams beginning to develop logistics and PL plans in the event that we can move forward. These are some important work groups to be aware of. In particular, we've been pulling leaders, all of our secondary leaders by level, to think about what would we do with that time. But the blue is what are the operational considerations? What does this mean for transportation, nutrition, et cetera? And then are there policy considerations, whether that's Colorado Department of Ed, full-time funding, minutes, our association agreement, master schedules. We have a court order with the Office of Civil Rights for our language learners. So all of those things need to be considered as we take this more seriously.
So, in closing, look, Danny, we're doing good on time. We've got a minute left.
Really
What are our next steps? We met with just our principal, I shouldn't want to say just our principals, but our secondary leaders to make sure this is something that they wanted and they could actually picture it in their mind. Those were the prototypes came from. So what are our next steps? We've talked to all of our principals, but we want them to continue to refine their school-specific, we're calling them prototypes, what their schedule would look like to ensure that all the required elements are in the plan. The next leadership study group meeting, we're going to meet again on January 20th from 2 to 4. We keep meeting on Fridays during early release time. Principals to potentially share these plans with their school accountability groups to make sure that their SACs or their school accountability committees have some input and ideas and thoughts. Again, it's engaging our community and our parents to provide that rationale for the school context and get that parent input. Early release senior leadership decision, we're hoping by the 1st of February, and then continue to work with these work groups so that we can create that action, or if you remember at the beginning, what's the plan? What would the plan look like, and how would we enroll it or unveil it or roll it out so that all of our players know and understand what their job, role, or responsibility is within their school or within the district.
Pretty good.
Board members, what questions do you have?
Thank you for that. Yeah, every time I hear, I like that we're addressing the fact that just taking your bullets, that there isn't really time for special education learning community meetings and data meetings that need to monitor the 504s. Like, yes. And then, specialists engaging in the learning community, and that we don't really have a way that we're doing those things right now. So all of those things make a lot of sense. Like, yes, we have to do those things. So how do we find a way to do these things? This seems to be a solution. I did have one question when we were looking, you compared the school districts and said, well, the school districts do these, and the ones that do well do these. And so I was just like glancing at them. I mean, I believe that there's value in creating time for these teams to, do better by these students and, reduce our legal exposure by doing better by the students. But it seems to be the case, like Pooter does the best always and they don't have it. Thompson has it weekly and they're doing the worst of our just comparables. And so I believe that this time is important, but when you look at this, I'm just, I think that the quality comes from, again, not the quantity of time, but the quality of time. Yeah, and so I think that as we move forward, really knowing, believing in the process and making sure that we're putting steps in place that we're not, again, pulling a Thompson and just having all that time and not meeting our needs. I want to make sure that we feel really dedicated and good about what we're doing. And it sounds like that's in place, but that just alarms me a little.
I think blocking the time, there's only so much we can do as a district level, and that's why this has been a partnership of district providing guidance and direction based on evidence, and then school leadership teams really fleshing it out with their site directors saying, do we have a high quality plan? There's a number of high achieving districts in there, but in general, it really does come down to each site leadership team and how they use that time, and so we have to create the conditions for that.
And our site leaders, you guys really talked about that, on how do we ensure that we're keeping that time sacred as it was being created or meant to do. Because sometimes it's a good intention, but doesn't already go through. And they were really thoughtful in talking to each other on how they need to make sure that they're following those expectations and helping their students, their teachers meet these expectations of time management as well. I don't know if you wanted to say anything about that.
You said it very well.
So how does the board hold or the district hold the sites accountable? Is it through our site leaders? Because, if this is something that, the board, the district that we move forward with, it's one, like, I agree with what Dr. Schultes is saying. It's great if we grant the time, but if 2 years from now, all of a sudden that time is not used for what we wanted it for, then we're kind of back to square one. It's almost like we took 2 steps forward only to take 1 step back. So I guess what is that part of what you're gonna flesh out here in the next few months, is to make sure that this stays consistent and on track, and you get some good momentum moving forward with something like this? Or is that gonna be up to principals? You know, I guess, I just wanna know that our families know that we're gonna hold the time accountable for the, because I think it's great, but I just want there to be assurances that we are gonna do what we're.
Yeah, and I think that's very important. I think it goes back to time being that commodity. It's money too, right? And so making sure, no, do I think it's all going to be No, it's got to be my responsibility. It's got to be part of professional learning. And then the other side of the house too with student services, and what is the plan that we put it, so it's everybody ensuring that we're meeting those expectations with their time. Yeah, of course, our site directors, I would ask them, as who I support them, that when they're in their buildings and they're with their site leaders, they meet with each one of their site leaders different times during the month. You know, is that one of the things they all have playbooks, and what do they talk about, or ensuring that in their playbook there is an opportunity that they make time, that not only am I going to come in and meet with Jeremiah about early release, I want to see what the agenda was, what was going on. And so site directors, of course, that could be a part of it, but it's got to be part of my responsibility. It's got to be part of curriculum and professional learning and student services. And how are we supporting, and what data are we collecting to ensure that the time is being used as designed? And then how are we as a district supporting our schools in order to meet the needs of their staff and their students?
I'd really like to know how you're going to gauge that time, like what data are you going to collect, and how are you going to, I mean, not that we need to get into the weeds, I'm just more curious because I'd like to know how you're going to then monitor the outcome year over year. I mean, you guys do a really good job of that now with other things, so I imagine that you have a plan for it, but I think that's, you know, I think that would be helpful to know, like, are we on the right trajectory by doing this? Because we obviously want to see better student outcomes for those particular groups, for sure.
Well, and as I say, you have 25 examples right now, so with the elementary schools doing it, how, I guess maybe, I don't know if you want to talk about it now, or about how are you monitoring to make sure, or how do you set up early release time for elementary schools, and then how are we actually monitoring whether that's effective? Because I think we could probably build off of that.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah. So elementary does give us a great proof point on what we call curriculum-based professional learning. We also want to view this as slightly differently. This is actually more robust than the elementary approach, where at elementary, the school directs one day per month, and then the district directs one. For example, our focus on early literacy and our partnership with Strive Literacy Consultants. So I think that element of what is our key driving professional learning for the year would be in there from elementary. But especially at secondary, where we see these behaviors cropping up, and you saw the data, the biggest gap we have right now is time for teams to meet, let's say a whole sixth grade team, to say, who are the top 5 learners who are just not getting it academically? That's what we call kid talks. And they really, if you were to check consistently happening, they're probably less than 20% of the time. We just don't have the space on our master schedule.
So out of the 4 Fridays that elementaries have right now, 2 of those are planned. They're set aside for plan, where our teachers have that opportunity, that individual time to use what they need to focus on their focus. This is when Danny says more robust. This is that defined autonomy. Here are the things that you need to be talking about, and here are the tools that you can be. And so we do have a prototype in elementary, but the district only has 1 Friday a month.
Yeah. So, and I guess the last metric, this is not new work. This is an extension of the work that's been underway for 3 years or so. So when schools set plan, do, study, act goals tied to learning communities, this is to build on and go deeper. Which kids didn't get it? Did we meet, right? And so this would strengthen what exists.
I guess I would just add an example from our site level. Because of our loss in FTE this past year, we had to create a brand new master schedule to create flexibility in classes, which caused us to have to decore. We used to have cores where we would have kid talks, radar meetings. The counselor would be in there every Wednesday with a different core, talking about kids, putting together a list, putting together an intervention plan. That's gone away now because we don't have that common core time. We don't have common grade level time. So all those talks are having to take place outside of the normal school day, either before school or after school. That's just a site example.
And the other thing is, many times when I was a middle school building principal, the time that when we talk about our general ed and our special ed teachers having opportunity during the day to collaborate, it was many times that our students receive their specialized instruction when the general ed teachers were on plan. And so this now provides that opportunity. So they were both busy, there was no time during the day that they could meet and collaborate, and this provides that time.
To hone in a little bit on what Dr. Hill was asking, how are we tracking the success in elementary schools?
So that's each site's, it's really twofold. Our focus this year, there's a district-wide focus each year, and then each school leadership team comes together 6 times a year. That's what our NIC convenings are, to really say, okay, where do we want to go quarter one? Great, let's plan it, and now let's roll it out. And so the site directors meet as much as weekly or 4 times a month, or once a month, so bi-weekly, every week, or once a month. And they really say, how are you doing actually implementing? Let's go walk classrooms. Let's watch your District Friday. And so that follows a sequence. This year it's been around the science of reading and getting us ready for the adoption of our new HMH resource, right? And so we kind of create content by quarter that each school leadership team, because we're sharing leadership like Jeremiah talks about, that they then go implement. And then we see that evidenced in school walkthroughs.
Okay, so the evidence that we're tracking is just, we're seeing it in action, but maybe there's not a data collection component right now.
So, well, that's what I was gonna say, going back to this first slide, is each school is expected, and we monitor this data, the academics and that culture data, which they're belonging, panorama, and we look at that as a whole, big picture, then we bring it together during leadership academies and level meetings, and we just start going down, deeper, looking at the context. Each building has their own building data to look at, and then peeling away the different layers and their students. So we go big data, and then we provide that opportunity in Leadership Academy and level meetings to guide them and give them the time to look at their data together, and then they go back to their sites and start working with their building teams. And then we also have those NIC weeks next month, this month already, that they come together and they create their goals based on their data.
Okay, so presumably the kind of the difference, the way we can kind of tell how each different school is doing is based on kind of comparing them together, and they're doing that actively, and then they're like, okay, here, because every curriculum is the same, whatever. So we can
Exactly.
kind of control for what are the variables
And we look at the same pieces of data every single time, so we don't mess up, we don't dirty our data by looking at different data points.
but there's still like 20 compounding factors, like, how are we dealing with academics, so many different ways. So, but because of the differences between schools, we can be like, okay, we think like you are a shining star of this thing.
Yes.
And other people can be like, oh, how are you doing that?
Yes.
And that's where the learning community really.
I think too, what you concretely is, we do need to be accountable, and what you'd be able to pull is right here. So for example, the pink row on the bottom where it says MTSS Kid Talks, each principal, school leadership team, site director can sit down with student services and say, how many synergy referrals did you have for students who are having like some high flying, challenging behavior? Great, give me the list of those 10 6th graders. Who are we gonna kid talk on week 2? Who are we gonna talk about and come up with proactive strengths-based interventions? Who are we gonna come up on week 4? And so that's concrete data around, really flagging, getting down to who are the kids, what are the gaps they have, what are we gonna do about it? And that all lives concretely in Synergy. Problem is we don't have the space or time to train on it and to have people load it. So this would give you the space to actually work the plan that we have set out.
And then presumably it'd be the site director's job to be tracking who is tracking these things and who's following up and what they're doing about it, and making sure that accountability piece.
I think the site director would be in charge of maybe gathering that data. It's ILT. We
Okay.
meet once a week and we review that data.
Okay.
And then we identify, oh, it looks like we need to ensure that, are they using these tools? No. Do they know the tools exist? Or do they not know how to use them? So why aren't they being a building, a leader, a site, why aren't they doing it? Well, maybe they didn't know about it, or we hadn't had the opportunity to train. So what can we as district leadership do in service to ensure that we're giving them the support that they need to support the people, our students? So we're in charge of supporting the people, and they're in charge of supporting the people, the most important people.
Okay, I have just a couple of things. I just want to echo again the accountability piece. What's the value in, I hesitate a little bit about just, we're going to go to an early release forever. Is there a point where we say, we kind of have the work done, or enough of the people, we've done this now? And I hesitate a little bit that it's going to be difficult to pull that back. Should we ever need to do that? Should we find that, the data shows that now it's kind of done, and our outcomes have increased and everything's looking really good? Do we continue that because now it's just the way we do it here? Or are we going to stay really solid with making sure that accountability and that time is really well spent? I'll leave that out there. And then the other thing is making sure that doing this is of value to every student. I know we have a specific group of students that it would be really beneficial to get everybody on the same page and have that learning for our staff, so that they can do their job better, easier, and have a better outcome for students. I just want to make sure that it's also not going to pull away from students. They're going to have less time in the classroom. How do we make sure that we don't end up with an addition, that we create a new problem because we've now reduced that time?
And I think that's really fair. I think that these are days. When you add up all of these minutes on the 32 Fridays, it equates to days, these hours, these minutes and these hours. And we have got to ensure that we're using every minute that we have wisely. We also know that we have doubled down, frankly, on these learning community opportunities with our NICs and pulling our teams together. And we have seen not only anecdotally, I mean, you can talk about NICs and having that time that you get to spend with your teachers during the day, not for an hour after school when everybody can make it. We're seeing our data improve.
And then, I don't remember, Danny, whether you said it, but we found things that don't necessarily work. Maybe it's just going to a conference for a day or those kinds of things. So are we going to be really actively pulling back and reducing the things that we're spending time or money on, that really we're not getting the bang for our buck on those things? What are we going to get rid of in place of this?
So to speak to that, and to give confidence to you all in our community, we really don't invest at a district-wide strategy in the things that we know don't work. Like, we don't send folks to conferences generally because it's usually a one-hit wonder. There wasn't feedback following up. So this is sort of the natural overflow of, we've built knowledge and awareness. I think a big idea here, your question about like, well, is this going to go away someday? I would actually say is high-performing schools, individual schools, learning systems, districts, they have this and they go from good to great. And the big shift from good to great is not, did I teach it? Did I teach it? Did I cover all my content in 8th grade social studies? But is it, did my learners learn it? And in those that did learn it, how do I extend, right? So that every kid, it is every kid. And for those who didn't learn it, so in that ongoing data meeting, I'm actually going to start designing 2 lessons. These 30% of my learners got it. Here's my extension. These 70% need a little more dose. Here's what I'm going to do for them. And so it actually, every time we work this cycle, which when we're working in isolation as educators, we don't get to this cycle. We're usually just surviving, covering what we're supposed to cover. When we make space to work this cycle, you rise tide for all ships. And that's really where this is taking us.
Agree. I think that's spot on. To Carrie's point, Pooter,
Uh-huh.
our nemesis.
Our
school-
yes.
Our school that we aspire to reach those kinds of outcomes. They're not doing this. And so is it, why is that? Have we reached out to that particular district and said, you guys aren't, what are you doing? And what are some of the differences? Because their outcomes are pretty impressive.
But one question I have for that is, we'd have to equally compare our ELL learners and our other learners to see, I'm gonna take a guess here, but they probably don't have the same amount as we do.
Very different demographics.
Yeah, and so, I mean, I think it's a valid question. I just think we have to make sure we're comparing apples to apples, and they may not necessarily need it right now because their demographic doesn't necessarily need it.
Yeah, and if it's demographic, I mean, I understand.
Yeah, but it would be good.
That's
I think it's worthwhile
clear
knowing.
difference.
Yeah.
But if it isn't just that,
Right.
is it that they did that for a period of time, and then they found that the work was sort of done, and they didn't need to continue that anymore? Or is it just a demographic issue that's so different from ours that we really can't compare that?
I think we need to look into, again, it's time and money. So we know that they have more mills, and so what are the resources that they have in play, and what does their professional learning look like? Do they have whole days? So I appreciate that, President Heights, and that, yes, and their demographics are different. How many days do they have an entire year? And then how are they they have more money, and how are they using that money to improve their student outcomes?
I would just add in that list too, Academy, Boulder, Jefferson County. There's a number of even more affluent and high-performing districts than Pooter that do have this. But I would say that you'd go survey those and you'd have 20 different versions in each of those districts. It's going to come down to what each school leadership team does to make the most of that time, and what do we do to support those school leadership teams.
I just want to let the board know that we're at 35 minutes for this topic. Don't rush, you're doing great. You guys are doing awesome. But
And then I think one basic question that's probably burning for just our parents is, obviously with secondary learners getting out at the same time as our elementary learners, that might actually help support families who are struggling. I mean, I know we're talking about time for our teachers, but what are you guys seeing that how will having middle school and high school out maybe help our parents of those younger kids?
Yeah, yes, and then that dovetails perfectly with what Dr. Hill was just asking, and we need to get input from our parents. So not only do we want our individual schools to meet with their SACs, their school accountability committee and their teams, but what would input from our parents and our community as a whole look like, and we need to get that as well.
Perfect.
One last question, sorry, it's a little.
This isn't our fault though,
No,
right?
no. Your time is good. Will's now keeping the board
We
on
talked
time.
really fast.
You guys have a lot of questions. You're good.
So we're thinking ahead, that's great, thank you. So our in-school, or our out-of-school suspensions still like double? What are we doing right now?
And that's a very fair question, and we've got to bring those kid talks. Of course, we know that the statistics are high across the state and the nation, but that's just that's not an excuse. So what are we doing now to ensure that our teachers have the skills and the strategies that they need to meet the challenges that our students are having right now? And we're working on that, yes.
I just want to say I misspoke. It definitely did not double. I just knew it was a double. It was it was an increase.
It's
that we're concerned about,
increased,
but it's not.
yes.
Did not double. I take it back.
I would just offer from the site level, we are seeing kids come back so dysregulated from the last 2.5 years. We feel like we're still playing catch up for kids to be able to function in that school environment, because some of them have been out of school for half a year, year and a half, 2 years, and we're just getting them like retrained. That's just an example I would give from the site level. So.
Just a couple follow-up points, because I really appreciate Angela and Andrea and Carrie's points. Is there, and you mentioned earlier, there's still a lot of factors and things need to be considered before this ever would fly. You mentioned those earlier, a whole laundry list of transportation and so forth and so on. Is there ever a thought about, would something like this have to be rolled out to every school all at once? And I guess I look at talent. You know, I know Jeremiah is a talented leader and could utilize that time, right? We're trying to be prescriptive to everybody, and maybe everybody doesn't need that prescription right now. I'm certainly an advocate, because I've been in those shoes. The more time, the better our teachers and staffs are craving that time to meet together. And as you mentioned, at your school, because of lack of some resources, you're not able to do some of the things you were able to do before. But that's something I wonder if we don't self-destruct sometimes, because we're laying something on some sites that just don't have the talent in leadership at this point. Maybe they'll grow into that to handle this type of endeavor. And would it also benefit you have some pilot type things going on? Does that make sense what I'm getting at?
I think so. Well, I'll tell you what's going through my mind when I hear you ask that question.
What was the question I asked?
So you're asking, does everybody need it, right?
No, not does everybody need it. I think everybody does need time. I think does everybody need it at the same time?
Does everybody need
In
this
other words,
time at the
a
same?
school like Fruita Middle, they're ready, they've got the leadership, the team. I would have to imagine not every school is ready for that. We wish they were, but because of various reasons, they may not be ready. And you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And you'd hate to have a whole thing self-destruct, because we have enclaves that are not ready for this,
Right.
and others that are.
And
that's
you're
what I'm saying.
saying on
These more
leadership specifically.
Yeah, because it's all about leadership. You mentioned that earlier. If you have that site director that knows, obviously, we have site directors who are making do and having great results without this. So one could say, well,
site leaders.
do they need it?
Yeah.
Sure they do, because you can go from great to
Exactly. Good to
greater,
great. Good to great.
great to even greatest, right? But so that's just something that can, I just see historically, from a broader picture, we roll out things for everybody, and sometimes it's just not ready for them. They just, not everyone learns to ride their bicycle at the same time or learn to talk at the same time. So that's a leadership issue that I know, Dr. Hill and the administration is looking, putting the best people in the right site for their communities. So that was just.
Well, and would we pull back individual schools if we weren't seeing the outcomes that we're looking for and the increases that we're looking for based on?
So I'm gonna.
Does that make sense?
It does make sense. I don't know that you're ever gonna find a situation where a school, and I could be wrong, is gonna say, we don't need that time now. Like we've figured out everything, all the supports we need for our kids. You got new kids coming every year, right? So you're always gonna have. So if you're using it for MTSS time, like you're always gonna have students that have needs outside of what the regular classroom may be providing. So I don't know that you would ever have a time where you'd say, we've met the goal and we could pull it back. I think you could always find a way to use that time wisely. Again, it comes back down to, are you actually using that time wisely, and is it actually beneficial? I think if you were gonna pull it back, it would be maybe a year or two down the road, we say, are we seeing good results from this? Are we seeing data that's showing that it's beneficial? And if it's not, then this was an experiment that we tried that didn't work out. I bet if we asked the elementary schools, I don't know that any of them would say, please give us, we don't want early release anymore. I think they all are using it. I bet we'd hear the same thing from secondary too. I think it's just more about, is it effective use of time, and maybe we pull back because of that down the road. And you're right, it is hard to give something and then take it back, but we won't know unless we try it. So I think that could be beneficial. And then the question of, do you roll it out at some and not others? I would say from a logistics standpoint, and I've talked to superintendents from other districts who did, maybe they didn't do some schools and not others, but they did like first and third Friday. And as soon as you start putting too much variability on things like this, it creates confusion for the community. It creates other issues like transportation issues. So this school does get out early, but this one doesn't. I don't know that that's going to be enough of a factor to not say that we needed this across the board. I think it gets back to, are we actually making sure that the leadership in the building is using the time wisely and that we're supporting them in the way that we need to make sure that they know how to use that time wisely.
And then Dr. Hill, I would add mobility. We have so many of our students that go from one school or to another, and not having that consistency for the community and for our students. And it's an infinite journey. You know, you're never going to have the same story this year isn't going to be the same story next year, let alone the next month or the next. So how do we ensure that we've got that uniformity to ensure we're meeting the needs of all of our students, which includes
Great points, and again, I want to reiterate, I think time is needed and then some. I guess maybe my broader message is, if we roll it out, let's try to make, and I know you will, it's rhetorical, but to make sure everyone can be successful, and that's the biggest thing, you're right. You have places right now ready to fly with it, and you have other places that, sites that don't, and that gets back to that building site leader that can make this happen.
And it goes back on our principals. That's
Yeah.
why we pulled them. They have to build that consensus. And what do their teachers think? What might that look like? That's where those prototypes come in. And we don't expect them to create their own prototypes. We expect them to work with their leadership committees in their buildings. So here's an opportunity. What's it going to look like? How can we support you?
Well, one thing, and this whole discussion made me think back, forgive me, the 2017 bond bill levy, and we put a 10-year sunset. The whole idea behind that was the accountability that we're going to use these funds and resources the way our community wants them to be used, and I think we're doing that, and we'll show that is when we go at some point in time to the community again. It's the same thing what everyone here has been saying, is that we provide this time, the community will, right, this Friday afternoon for our secondary schools, that there's an accountability there that show us it's making the difference you're saying it will. Because if 3, 4, 5 years from now, we're not seeing that. And again, you can't just draw a direct correlation between we do this and all of a sudden all the ills will go away. That's not going to happen. But it can help, right, lessen the load on people and make them more effective. So.
Yes, and we have research that supports that. There's so much research out there that says that efficacy, that when our teachers come together to identify those problems, look at their data, have the tools and strategies, and the opportunity to learn from each other, there's a direct correlation to student outcomes.
Absolutely. That's great. Thank you.
So we'll be back.
Yes, thank you. We're interested in the information.
over there. I think it
We'll
broke.
be
We
back.
we should have timed ourselves. Yeah.
We're on the third.
All right, we need to take a 10-minute break real quick, so we'll be right back. All righty, I'll call kind of our board members back if possible. It's 6:30. All good. I know, you're good. I love how we just love to connect. It's great. Alrighty, so we are going to move on to Juniper Ridge Certificate of Participation request. So for those of you that are presenting this evening, come on up. If you need to add some more chairs up there, go right ahead. Yep. And I know all of you, but if you guys could also just introduce yourselves for the rest of the board and any of our community members that are listening.
Okay, hi, I'm Kathy Staten, and I'm the finance, the, yeah,
She's the treasurer.
treasurer,
Of the board
sorry.
of stewards.
The treasurer of the board for Juniper Ridge School.
Oh, I'm Elaine Courier Griggs. I'm the chair of the board.
I'm Lynn Hamberfield. I'm the school finance officer at Juniper Ridge Community School.
So thank you for letting us come before you today. Juniper Ridge Community School is a charter school that is on its, we're on our 10th year or 9th?
10th.
Yeah, 10th year. So we've been around a while, which is good. We came to you guys a number of years ago because we needed to expand our building. We started out the same place that Caprock started out originally on 24 and a half Road and outgrew that space fairly quickly. And we came to you and got certificates of participation in order to build our main campus. So we have a nice campus now that stretches between 7th Street and 1st Street, just north of Patterson. And it's been a wonderful campus, but we had originally planned on 3 phases of that campus. And so we've now maximized all the space that we have, and we've completely run out of space to put anybody else. We are now serving children from kindergarten. We have 3 kindergartens, and then we're double tracking 1st through 8th grades. So we're now completely filled with all of those. Our enrollment has increased every year. We're sitting at 418 students right now. So we need to build some more extra buildings, and we have kicked around a number of ideas of how to do that. But the fact of the matter is that because of the certificate of participation that we signed originally with you guys, we don't actually own our land. So we have no way of financing any other kind of building without coming back to you guys and doing an amendment of that certificate of participation. So we can't just go to the bank and borrow money. So when we originally spoke to the finance people at the district, they said, you need to come before the board and ask for an amendment of that COP. So we're asking for an additional $3 million. And with that, what we would like to do is we want to add an addition to our main building that would give us 10 classrooms, and that would put 1st through 5th grade in the main building along with our administrative and our kindergartens. We have an 8-plex that we'll have all our grades in right now. So we have an 8-plex that houses 1st through 5th, I think, right now. And then we have 6 other 2-plex modular buildings. We would like to remove those. We own 3 of those buildings. We lease the other 3 of those buildings. The leases on those are really running up to high numbers and that are not financially sound to continue those leases. So we would like to eliminate those leases by doing an addition to the main building. So the nice thing with our main addition being an addition to the main building is that we cut down the number of entrances, and it becomes a much safer environment for the students. There are fewer ingress and egress points that we have to cover for security purposes. And we also purchased an 8-plex modular building that we need to get refurbished and established on the back of the land that will also fill some other purposes, such as a library, special ed rooms, other special classes. And then we also would like to build 2 stick-built buildings of 1,500 square feet each, 1,800 square feet each. That would be our art studio and our wood shop. So we've submitted quite a bit of financial information. I don't know if you've gotten packets on that and if you've already gone through all that. But, you know, the gist of it is that the total cost will come to about $3.2 million. We're putting in, as much money as we can, but we'd like you to fund that $3 million through debt. We can service the debt adequately without going beyond the 20% limit. So we're allowed, our debt service needs to be on 20% or less of our expenditures. And we've shown on the paperwork that we've submitted that we would fall below that level. So we try to be extremely conservative. We're very careful with our money. Lynn, when she submits numbers to the district, she's very conservative in those numbers. So, we're not being indulgent there. We're not going for big ticket items. We're just remaining as, as simplified as we can to offer the best education that we can. Do you want to go through any, I guess the square footage on the addition to the building is 7,580 square feet. And then the eightplex, do you know how much additional square footage that's giving us? Yeah.
The two 1,800 buildings are the separate ones.
Yeah, the separate ones. Right.
I had a question. I don't know if we're missing a page, final project cost. It seems like, so it says subtotal 2.7 million, and it seems like that maybe is a subtotal of stuff that wasn't detailed above. I can't see any detail about
7 million?
2.7.
Okay.
Oh,
So this specifically?
yeah, 2.7 is the actual construction of those spaces. And then we have other expenses that are in that number, that get us over to the $3 million. There's,
Do we have the bid for that 2.7? Or do we have any more detail about that 2.7?
right, well, we have to redo all the locks. We're putting in cameras,
I
things
think she's
for
asking about
security.
the 2.7. The 2.7 was to finish refurbishing the eightplex. We started this building project using a large amount of our ESSER 3 money. And, we all know what construction is right now. So we rapidly ran out of that. And then we added the eightplex and then, of course, the addition to the building. The 2.7 was the amount that our contractor, Maves Constructions, our GC, they said they could finish it and do the other two pieces on it for that amount is the 2.7. So that number came from our contractor.
So we have that bid package then. We have like the documentation of like the itemized,
It's a cost plus contract.
right? So all of that would be in there.
They said that was the number that they gave us. They had broken it out previously, and then when we made changes, they said, okay, this is what we can get you. And that was the number they brought to the building committee.
And do we have that like bid package from them?
I don't have that complete package from them. They were going to get that to us. We don't have it yet.
Okay. So is the 2.7 just, it's like flexible still? If we don't have the bid back from them?
I don't really believe that it's flexible. They were pretty firm on that number. But we did put in some contingency amount as well. And if you notice, the amount of the 2.8 is where it comes to, and we're asking for 3, so we're still allowing for some contingency in there as well.
Okay. I would love to see, so if they gave you a bid and there's a contract, they finalize the contract method with you guys, that means that there's documentation from them saying.
Part of our packet had the construction contract we had from them, which is the cost plus.
So, okay, so it doesn't seem like, interesting. Okay, so I'm just trying to wrap my head around what this would mean if as a client, I was like, I want you to build me this chair, just whatever example. And somebody said, okay, well, the chair is going to cost you $12. They would have to say like the bolts would be this much and the wheels would be this much. And so that would all have to be detailed for them to come up with the dollar amount. And so I'm wondering if Maves did that ever, and maybe we just haven't seen it, or?
I believe they've done it, we just have not seen it.
Okay, yeah, so let's see that.
And are we tied to Maze, or did you shop it around to see if maybe somebody else or?
We moved into Maves when we were discussing how we were going to expand it, and then the addition to the building, originally, yeah, we were getting bids from different general contractors, and then we contracted with Maves to refurbish the eightplex, and then before it was two 1,800 square foot buildings, it was two Quonsets, and then we modified it. And then when we were talking about how we still are not going to have enough room, we just kind of moved into Maves as far as having them do the addition.
So the possibility that somebody else might be able to say, MCI could come in and say, hey, we'll do it for 1.8 million, you know, is that, or are you stuck to?
Well, there is that possibility, but we sent out requests for bids, and we got no response from the really large builders like FCI and PNCI and those kind of guys, because the project's just too small for some of those construction companies to want to deal with.
Do we have competitive bid requirements for our money? Yeah, okay. So that maybe would have to be something we would have to consider or look into.
Okay, I mean, we
I don't know, I'm not the final word. I'm
Right.
just saying that that's, you know, we have to follow the law and our.
Right, yeah. Yeah, because the one thing that has happened is we started out with trying to just expand. And so we bought the eightplex and said, well, we'll refurbish it. And then, you know, the bids started coming in, and all of a sudden the bids started just accelerating. The construction atmosphere for the past year has been unbelievably volatile. And I'm sure you ran into that with the high school project. I'm sure that your bids just started growing. And so we started out with the Quonset huts for those two separate buildings, thinking that would be the least expensive option. But as we got into it more and more, we found out there were more engineering requirements, and then we got to the point of pouring the pads, and they're saying, oh, wait, we need to do this and that and several other things. And all of a sudden, the costs were so high. And we were starting to work with Maves at that point, and they said, you know, we can go to stick-built and build for less per square footage than we can do this Quonset huts.
I have a couple questions. Where did we get the money, where did you get the money for the Quonset huts?
That came from the ESSER 3 money.
Okay. So there might be some requirements tied to that as well. Who's managing this project for you?
Maves Construction is our GC.
So there, okay. And do you have an owner's rep for it? Okay, that answers.
They probably don't have an owner's rep for this small of a project. They had an owner's rep when they built the larger school facility.
Yeah.
So, and we'll have to double check, but charter schools may have a little bit of a nuance there with how they do their RFPs, because they're basically just asking us for the loan, and then the onus is really on them to make sure they're getting the best bang for the buck, which I know we're lending them the money, but it is hard to find a contractor that will do a $3 million project in town. They had that challenge the first time they built the larger school portion, but we need to probably get clarity on that if they have to do a certain RFP and get certain bids. We'll get clarity for you guys on that, and if that's the route they need to go. I don't know if that's in our requirements for our charters or in our certificate of participation. Do we have we'll have to look at if that's our policy requires an RFP.
All right, other questions?
So you guys you were working with Maves on your Quonset huts, and they basically told you could spend less money with the alternative. So you did your RFP prior to that, right? When you were looking to see who would help you put your Quonset huts together? Right. Okay, and so you've somewhat done the process, just not for kind of the project you now have before you.
The project just kept evolving. So we
Okay.
never went back and said, okay, now we have a clearly defined new project. Let's send it out for RFPs, you know, and we maybe should do that, I guess, but.
Well, in your how much was your first project you guys were trying to anticipate with the Quonset huts?
For just the Quonset hut?
Well, what was a few $100,000?
The first project was refurbishing the eightplex and the 2 Quonset huts.
Okay.
And that's, we did, you know, go out and try to get bids from different contractors with that and got a lot of thanks but no thanks.
Sure.
But what was our original budget on that? It was pretty low. you know?
Right, it was a much smaller project for, especially a commercial builder who understands how to build for schools and all the requirements that are needed for that, correct? It's not like you guys can just get anybody to come and build for you.
Right, we had a hard time getting anybody to reply for those RFPs.
Okay.
you know.
Can I, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. Yeah.
I'm just trying to figure this out. So, but for that project, so you had the project, you had the money, you had the materials, you had the contractor, and then costs just started escalating, and so you stopped that project.
Right.
And then we came back together with this much larger scope of a project.
Correct, right.
Can you walk
Because
me through
when
that
we really-
decision?
When we really looked at what are we getting, we saw that we were just trying to incrementally add some space here and some space there. So we had the 2 Quonsets that would serve our specials, so for our wood shop and our art studio, and then the 8-plex would give us additional space. But then when the numbers started to go up and we realized we're going to have to borrow in order to fund this project, we need to look at, in its entirety, what does this campus need to look like? Because if we add a little here and a little there, we're always still going to be short on space. So we stepped back, took a much more macro look at this project and said, ultimately, for full capacity for the school to really operate and to do its best by these kids, what space do we need? We didn't have a library. We weren't even looking at adding a library at that point. So, and then the special ed requirements were not really being taken into consideration at that point. So when we really stepped back, and Maves helped us do that, they said, let's take a real look at what all of the opportunities are and how you can best meet those opportunities. So, because originally we were, going to get rid of some of the Quonset, or some of the modular spaces and keep others. And so it was beginning to break up the flow of the campus. And that's when our GC said, you could stick build this for a lower cost per square foot if you simply do an addition onto that building. And we thought that's a really good idea. And since we own this 8-plex, we're already going to have to refurbish it anyway. Let's include that in there. And that 8-plex will give us a lot of flexibility to add that library, to add those bed spaces, to add some potential offices for people who still need offices and things like that. So this will really get us to the final point of what we need in order to fulfill that campus at its maximum capacity. That's correct. Yes. Right. 3 phases, that's correct. No, you're doing well. That's correct. Right. Yes. Well, the cost overflows were unbelievable.
Go ahead, Kathleen. She wasn't in her position at that time. It was fine.
And I only ask because you mentioned the new contract developing something totally different. My recollection was that master plan covered all the things.
I'm Kathleen Muma. I'm the head of school. So, hi, thank you. So you're correct in that, but when that master plan was developed, there wasn't really the forethought of how programming would grow and what we would look like at, max capacity, because we're actually, well, 460 is our, if we were, every seat was filled. So there really wasn't that forethought. And when you go back and look at that initial phase plan, it actually does not suit the needs of the programming that's developed right now. It also, I have to remember, phase 2 or 3 actually would destruct our current playground that we spent $100,000 on. And so to me, that's just, why would we throw away money and get rid of our program? So it really just doesn't, I think the forethought of how the school would grow and progress over the years, obviously no one can see the future, but I don't think that was really thought through, and programming has changed. I think with this, this project, we're really set and looking good for the foreseeable future without doing another build. Yeah. Yeah, you're right.
Yes, absolutely.
Financial commitment, because there's still some ownership the district has COPs, right? Things fell apart. Well, let's figure, what liability befalls the district.
Yeah, I think too there was part of, just for a little more clarification on the changing. Can you hear me or do we?
Yeah, the microphone really just helps the community. You're fine. They can hear you.
Okay.
Good.
Great. No pressure. Now I lost what I was going to say. I think part of the change in the scope of the project too was when we had an initial meeting, with the district, with Mel and Dr. Hill, and Clint was there. It was that if we're going to ask to amend this COP, let's do it and do the project right, instead of asking for a little bit now and then in 3 years having to come back to the board and say, hi, we're here again because now we're out of additional space. So really just looking big picture and doing that, that one-time amendment versus trailing it out over the years.
Do you recollect, did Chamberlain give you some estimated costs at the time on phase 2 and 3? Now, granted, I know those costs would be different in today's world, but do you remember what 2 and 3?
Yeah. Each phase was going to be another 7 to 7.5 million.
So now you're basically saying you can complete your project for about 3.
Yes.
Is that kind of is that what I'm hearing, is that you guys could be really okay. And then also, I guess you said you have your leases coming up on the modulars, so that also would help offset or be able to, as payment towards the other 3 million COP that you're requesting.
That's correct.
Which you would feel would be better money spent, putting towards a building you would own rather than renting.
Right.
Okay. Okay.
Right. So the budget that we submitted, we're looking at our sources of funding, and some of it would be the COPs, some of it is our own savings, some of it is used from our contingency, and some of it is contingent on trying to sell a couple of smaller parcels that are quite a ways from the school itself that we will not be able to use in the future anyway. So we're looking at ways to make it a cohesive campus and, go ahead and make the use of the funds that we can get from those outlying pieces of property and put it into the actual school campus. So, we've explored a lot of options on how to fund this, and we're trying to fund as much of it as we can ourselves and rely as little on debt as possible.
And then I did see in the packet that, at least with the Maves proposal, you guys did include a lot of, I think, estimates for, looks like some technology, equipment, and other things that is all pieced out. But I think, so does Maves have their own architect then, or they do their own in-house stuff, so you don't need to then hire Chamberlain or anybody else to do that again? Okay. All right. Okay, well, I guess I think the only thing we need to know is if there's a requirement on the RFP piece. Is that, I think that's something the board, we need to know if they're required to put out for more bids, just for competitive, if that's,
Does a thanks, no thanks count as a bid?
well,
I mean-
it's a response.
Yeah.
Yeah, if, I mean, if you guys put it out and if you, we just need, I guess the board just needs to know what responses you did get, whether it was, and if it is a no, we just need to know that if you only got one contractor that came back willing to do it, then that's, I think that's just what the board needs to know.
Right.
But we can have Melanie just make sure that on our end, we're just making sure we're following the process correctly
Yes.
for you guys.
Exactly. Okay, we'll double check to make sure that we've covered all of our bases, and, you know, if the district wants us to go back and try to get more RFPs, we can send it out again. We'd be happy to do that and see what we get.
Well, and this is a much larger and different scope of work, right? Than
Yes,
before.
right.
I don't think I understood what that previous dollar amount was, but it's much larger.
That's true. It just kept growing because, one, the construction costs just kept increasing. But then, you know, as we really looked at the scope of the work, it's like, well, are we doing ourselves a favor by doing it piecemeal? And how would we fund any further exploration? So we said, if we've got to go and get borrowing anyway, let's look at the entire campus and see what we actually need. And that's,
I think part of the problem too is bringing the Quonset huts up to code and all the, fulfilling all the regulations, and that was just not feasible to do that. And so as those things started creeping up and creeping into it, we were advised to move.
Well,
in a
that was
different
part of the
direction.
evolution too,
Yeah.
because
Right.
when we first looked at the Quonsets, that was the least expensive option.
Right. And it got
was,
more and more
it was projected to be relatively inexpensive, but by the time we got done, it had about tripled in cost. And they were things that we had no way of knowing to even anticipate that. So, you know, and even the refurbishment of the eightplex that we bought, we got it very inexpensively, but then the refurbishment began to grow and grow and grow because we uncovered other unforeseen things like mold damage in there, you know, and so it's like, oh, we got to stop and take care of that issue, and then, you know, it's just amazing. So not only the costs increased, but the scope of what we had to do kept increasing, and so that's why when Maves really took a good independent objective look at it, they said, why are we doing it this way? Let's step back and make a whole new plan that makes more sense. And that's why the old plan, it didn't make a lot of sense, and it would have been a tremendous amount more money. And we're, you know, because the costs are so high right now, and the cost of lending is relatively high these days too. We wanted to keep that as low as we could while still accomplishing and getting the space that we need.
With the ESSER dollars, so did the ESSER dollars come to D51? Are there, just trying to figure out the change in the scope of work, and I wonder if the change in the scope of work, if the ESSER funds were given to us with you know, this, we're gonna do this project, and now we're like, oh, we're not gonna do that. Or do we know the implications of that?
We're still doing the same project that we started with the ESSER money.
Oh, the Kwanzaa huts are
So the
still
ESSER money
It's the
purchased the Quonsets
And the eightplex.
and the eightplex.
Did the site work.
And for the refurbishment of the eightplex. So that piece of it where the ESSER funds were being directed has really not changed. What's really changed is adding the stick-built building addition onto the main building, and that was never part of the ESSER funds request. So with the Quonsets, we're going to turn around and sell those. We cannot just return them. The manufacturer of those will not take them back. And we probably are not going to be able to sell them for all of what we put into purchasing them. So we're asking for permission because those were bought with ESSER funds. D51 has asked us to make sure that we run it through CDE, that we've got permission to sell that at less than what we originally paid for them. We
It's
don't.
in process.
They're still working on that. They've come back with a number of questions.
CDE's timeline.
It's been a few
Well,
months
they've
already.
asked questions and we've responded to them, so.
Melanie has some info. Yep. Come on up.
As the fiscal agent for ESSER, so we've been the go-between in getting their questions, and actually it's something from CDE that they've already been sure how to handle. So they're consulting with the feds, and so there's a whole chain of how that's taking place. But once we became aware that the intent was to dispose of those Quonset huts, what would happen is if those are allowable to be sold, that money would go back into ESSER. So it would still need to be an ESSER qualifying expense. It wouldn't just be freed up general fund money to pay towards projects. So we were actually supposed to have a meeting this week. Doug, our ESSER accountant, and myself with CDE. He's actually had a family emergency, and so we're going to postpone that until early next week. But we're still working on it. Honestly, CDE doesn't know how to handle it either because they haven't had that question yet with these ESSER providers.
Thank you. All right, well, sounds good. So I guess we'll just, I think you guys are looking for the board to vote on this in a couple of weeks. So hopefully we can have a little bit more information in the next couple of weeks that'll be forthcoming, so.
Yeah, and I think in the meantime, just a reminder that if y'all have questions for Mel and her team about what this means for the district, and this is borrowing on our credit, and so what implications come with that, that Mel and her team are available for board questions as well.
All right, sounds great. Anything else that you guys want to add, or does
Well,
anyone
I
else
just
want
want
to?
to make sure that if we're going to vote on this in a couple weeks, it's a lot of, I'm just not sure that the timeline, I just,
We have it earmarked on the agenda, but obviously, if we don't have all the information, the
Yeah.
board can't take a vote.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm just kind of giving ourselves a deadline, so to speak, but if we don't have it, then we'll have to wait.
okay.
Yes.
Is there a deadline for the COP? We can just do that whenever we want to. Okay, all right. Okay,
You guys are probably wanting to do your project this
Yeah.
summer? Is that kind of what you're, would like to see? Okay.
Trying to get there.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you very much for your presentation. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we'll get information and get back to you guys too. I guess if we have Mel here, does the board want to ask what the implications are for additional COP money? Might as well, the public might be wondering. Yeah, so Mel, if you could come up.
So one, I think my recommendation would be hopefully that we would have some time to do some two-in-ones. That way we can really go through the financial piece. I have taken a look at their proposal, but obviously without some of that bid information, I think the drawings we need some better drawings. We've requested those as well. So there's some pieces that are still outstanding that we need to research. Obviously, we're vetting this with RBC, who is involved in issuing our initial COPs. The COP process isn't a short one. It's a pretty involved, intensive process of taking out credit on the district's credit. There's some board policies that I sent you guys as well. This would be debt that we would be securing for them for 20 or 25-year term. So, yep. So what RBC has told us is maybe 5.5%, which is considerably higher, of course, than in 2018 when we took them out.
But that's a pass-through to them, right? Doesn't Juniper Ridge pays that?
We withhold it from their payments. So we are the first, yeah. We would need to put up one of our buildings as collateral. We already did that for their existing building. I think it's actually this building that we're sitting in right now that was collateralized for it. We did COPs for Mesa Valley at the same time as well. One of them was Orchard Mesa Middle School, and one of them was this building that was collateralized. So we would need to do the same thing for this amendment as well.
So in looking long-term, as far as needs go, have they worked with a demographer or anything like that? I wonder to make, I mean, is their program going to need to grow that much?
I would defer
You guys are
to them on
so-
that.
sorry, I
Yeah.
didn't mean to talk like you weren't in the room. I'm just wondering, are you sure you need that? Looking into the future, they're there now, but where will they be in 2 years? Because you're going to be paying on this for 25 years. We need to look maybe a little bit further into the future to say, okay, I understand what the needs are right now, but are those needs going to diminish and decrease over the next several years? And if that's the case, that would make it very difficult for you to meet the requirements of that kind of a loan.
You can come back up.
Yeah.
Kathleen.
Sorry, it's
I mean,
kind of
the-
coming to me
If
just.
we're wondering it, so is the public, and so
Yeah.
Yeah.
we need to be.
I don't, just to answer your question, I don't see those needs for space diminishing. A lot of it is right now we have people on top of people crammed in. I mean, I have one building that has 9 people working out of that space for special education intervention. So it's that we have no space, but our special education services aren't gonna go away, or our intervention teams, our behavior coaches, those things are not gonna
They're
go
not
away.
going to go away, but I'm just curious as we look into the future with the demographer that the district uses, we're seeing that there's most likely going to be a fairly significant decline in students.
Right.
So it would reason to me that that would affect our charter schools as well. It's not just district, because it's our community.
Has your enrollment declined?
Our enrollment has been increasing every year. And I think this is more, I understand what you're saying based on enrollment. I'm trying to think how to explain what's in my head.
Shoot it out there and it'll probably come together.
So we're creating, so for instance, my Spanish teacher is rolling around with a cart from classroom to classroom. Our Spanish program isn't going to go away, so we're creating a classroom space for her. Our curriculum is seated in a lot of our specials and arts and those types of classes. Those people don't have classrooms to teach out of. They're traveling. You know, I have an art teacher who's crammed in this tiny place trying to do ceramics and things like that. So from a programming, those are programs that per our charter we wouldn't be cutting out. They would still stay intact, you know, unless the worst case scenario in enrollment would happen, but they would stay intact. I don't know if that helps at all. Or
Let's just say you guys lose 100 students, which would be a lot for a charter school.
Absolutely.
I mean, district-wide, we're down 1,200 overall the last couple of years and 480-something this last year. So, okay, so 100's a lot for the charter school. Would you still feel at that number you'd still need the space at right now?
Yeah.
Okay, so I think that's just kind of, I mean, and I know we're all speculating because we don't know what enrollment numbers are going to be. We're all trying to, you know, work with the demographer, but I think my concern from the charter school standpoint is to make sure that they can keep paying on, and they have the enrollment to make sure that they can pay for the loan or what you're asking for.
Right.
That's I mean, that's 25 years is a pretty long term.
Right, so I'm just gonna put it out there. I think some of the considerations are that the property and the building do belong to the district. So if there was any reason that something happened with Juniper, not saying that it is.
The worst.
But yeah, blowing it up, right? Worst case scenario here. We would be responsible for making those payments, and we would also have the building. So I would say that financially, one consideration or one question I would have is if we add $3 million in debt to this building, are we adding $3 million in value as well? So that would be one thing that I would hope that we might have an answer to as part of this process. Just
Well, and I
for
think
that worst case scenario.
When you guys are meeting with Clint, and I know you guys mentioned your extra land, I think we need to maybe look, because the district, you know, is joint tenants, or, you know,
Right.
owns that with you all, that maybe we see how that could maybe create some assurances or buffers too that helps. Because if this is helping you guys get to the completion of your project, I know, you know, maybe there's some safety net there for the district as well. I mean, just maybe let's explore those things if you guys can talk with Clint, and maybe let him know what your guys' you know, plans are if you sold that land
Right.
what you were looking to do with those funds, because the district would have to sign off on the sale of those pieces of property as well, so.
Right.
Let's just maybe make sure we're looking at all the options, so then the board knows kind of what you guys are all putting your skin in the game, and then we know what the district's skin in the game is, so.
With, your enrollment now is what, 4?
418 per October count, but
So with the additional space, what will that accommodate? What,
it's going to give classrooms to my special subject teachers, Spanish, art, we have a music room, handwork, those types of extra, specials classrooms. Also, our special education teachers, it'll allow them to each have classrooms. It'll allow a library to go in. Our reading, 2 spaces for our reading interventionists. We have 2 reading interventionists, a classroom for our math interventionists so that people have adequate space to meet with children.
so,
Stay at 418, but just more space for those 418.
Yeah, I mean, we have the potential of, looking
what
on
I'm
the.
getting at,
yeah.
and Will brought that up, is so what you're saying is it will better accommodate the enrollment you have now.
Correct.
So do you have a vision for where do you cap your numbers for your programs? Is there we don't want to grow more than 600 or?
Well, we're capped by our charter at 460.
Okay.
That's our maximum capacity, being a three rounds of kindergarten at 20 per class, and then 25 on the 2 rounds, 1st through 8th. So we're naturally capped.
Sure.
And this space will, even if we went all the way up to that 460, this will accommodate everything.
Okay.
In terms of needs.
Thanks.
Do you still have people on waiting lists for like kinder? And I'm guessing if the Montessori and
We do.
those are feeder opportunities for you all, right?
We have people still on waiting list, and then, right now is our transition mode because we go from waiting list and we'll kick off open enrollment, here in January, starting to open that up for next year, so.
Can I ask, so who owns the land? I'm confused about the land ownership of the land that you're thinking of selling.
The district actually owns it per the original COP.
So does that fit in with like all of our long-range planning for, I'm surprised to hear that it's the sale of our land.
Well, the COP, think of it as like a lease to purchase.
Yeah.
So they went and acquired the property originally, and then when, at the time, Juniper could not go out to the bond market like the district can. So they came to the district to basically say, can you borrow money on our behalf? Once it's paid for, and Melanie, correct me if I'm wrong, they then own it. So we're, again, the owner. My understanding, though, is that both the district and Juniper would need to sign on anything together, right, for sale, or is it just the district now?
I'm not sure. I would have to
Okay,
figure that out.
maybe we can get clear. The COP, I think, might have changed that because Juniper deeded the ownership of the land that they had at the time to the district or jointly deeded it. So I guess we could kind of get clarity on
And
that.
that's where a lot of these intricacies, we rely really heavily on our bond counsel, just to make sure that we are following everything of Kim Crawford, so.
Yeah, but the best way to think of it is they're leasing it with the whole intent is once they're done with the payments, Juniper would own the property.
And that's what a COP is, just for anybody that's curious and listening to you, is that a bond obviously is a voter-approved way to get capital funding. Outside of a voter approval, COPs are really the only mechanism available to school districts because it is like a lease-to-buy option. So that's like when we talk about putting a building up that we're collateralizing it, is that we're leasing that building and we're giving the bank essentially one of our buildings in place of that until the time that we pay it off. And so every COP works that way. Like this building right here was paid with COPs as well. And so of the existing COPs that the district has, one is for this building, one is for Juniper Ridge's current building, and one is for Mesa Valley Community School when they purchased and renovated their current building. And so those are the 3 that are out there. And that's what's guided by that policy that I sent you all of, those payments on any of our COPs cumulatively can't exceed 1% of our general fund revenues. And so that's kind of our limit to make sure that we're protecting our credit rating as well and not putting too much debt on it.
Yeah, and the challenge with charter schools is they don't typically get to participate in any bond the district puts out because we obviously have a number of other
Well,
facilities that.
And they can though.
Well, no, I'm saying they
Yeah.
can. It's
So
just not
Independence
typical.
Academy, Independence Academy was on our 2018 bond. So they did have some projects back in 2017 bond, back in that one. The other two charters didn't, and I don't know how that all came about, but they were given that opportunity. So that would be another thing that is available for the future as well.
Sure. I had one other question and now I forgot it, but. I don't know, I think if you can get the project done for 3 million versus another 14, and it would probably be more 20 nowadays. But let us get some more information, just make sure that, you know, we're also being the good fiduciary for the district, but, and see what that can help you all with too. So, any other questions? Thanks, Melanie. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Juniper Ridge Board and staff. Alrighty, so now we have the Grand Junction High School-based health center discussion for the board. So, do we have board members that would like to bring up any questions, or Dr. Hill, did you have anything that you needed to
No, I
kick
think
off with first?
to kick it off, I mean, there were kind of two things at once. One, we've had some questions from the board about potentially a school-based health center going into Grand Junction. Remember, we have one at Central High School right now that opened, I think it was 2019, 2018, 2019, I can't remember. And then, so there's those questions. Clint and Bridget went back and found a lot of documentation from previous board meetings. There's a resolution, the work that was done around the community survey that was done on whether or not there was a need for school-based health centers, so all that was sent to the board. So that's one piece, and then the other piece is that Marillac, who's actually here tonight, if there's any questions from the board, they have a timeline for writing a grant, and if I mess up what I'm saying, y'all can correct me, but it's a planning grant that they would use for, if they were awarded those dollars, they would use it over the next year to plan out potentially opening a school-based health center in the new Grand Junction High School, and then they would need that planning grant dollars to do that work, and if they were going to go for future grants to fund that building or the operations of that building, they kind of need that first step to happen, and I believe the deadline is the 27th of January, so they're looking for some direction as well on whether or not we're going to utilize a space within the new high school for the school-based health center. So that's kind of where we're at right now, and like I said, they're here if they have any questions from the board on their part of it.
Right, thanks. And the reason I added this to the agenda was because since this conversation took place, I think starting in 2017 and kind of transpired and then COVID hit in the middle of it, I think it's worth the public being able to weigh in and the board being able to have a conversation around it, because one thing we don't want to do is I guess make assumptions and put something in a school and then the community is either for or against it. And so it really ends up coming down to the board being able to have a discussion and potentially a vote on it. So board members know why it was added to the agenda, just so that it's transparent with our public about a potential clinic in the Grand Junction High School. So I don't know if any board members would like to be able to weigh in, and I know we got some additional information here as well.
I would just start that out that I have concerns about the principle we're moving from with adding in an outside organization into the middle of one of our schools. We don't have any control over that. We don't have any control over how things work within that facility. And I worry that we're not staying in our lane, that our focus needs to be on students and outcomes and making sure that that happens first. So I'll start with that.
Are you saying that stemming from our interactions around the Orchard Mesa pool?
Somewhat. I think there are a lot of things. I think we've been, there have been several things that have been surfacing regarding, what business is the school district in? We've pretty much identified that we are not in the pool business. Didn't ever want to be in the pool business, should have never been in the pool business, but somehow we find ourselves in the pool business. And there have been all kinds of issues that have arisen around that. So, coming back to, is it sort of unrealistic to think that we can literally provide and do everything within the district? And I worry about, again, I was talking about this earlier, that it's a little bit like you own a business and you're responsible for everything that happens under that roof. Whether you really are or not, the perception with the public is that you are responsible and you are in agreement with everything that goes on under your roof. When you bring someone else in, an outside entity in, and put their organization under your roof, I think it insinuates a lot of things that maybe we don't have any control over.
I think for me, when we talk about staying in our lanes, I know our lane is our children, our kids that are going to schools. And, evidence was earlier presentation where we have 1,100 expulsions and ISS, so more of a mental thing that we should be able to utilize those for more behavior, for more mental stuff. So if we can get some more counselors in there or some mental help in there, I think that'd be better used than almost, I'm not saying the medical is not necessary, but I think it'd be possible if we could figure out a way to have more counselors in that area. It would, I'm not saying it would change the world, but it would definitely help, the 1,100 expulsions or suspensions we have in a little less than 4 months. So that's the main thing for me, is making sure our kids are safe and they're mentally prepared and ready to go. So trying to figure out how to fix that would be a big ask for me, so.
I'd agree, Will. During that presentation, I was pretty stunned at the number of mental health professionals that we have within the district. If we have more mental health professionals under under district control, truly our employees, we have much more control over how those services and what services are used.
Well, I think even at Central, when I visited Central and they talked about the counselor there who's highly spoke of, and that does as many meetings that he has a day and as many kids as he's touched, I just think if we could multiply that, how many different kids we could reach and how many, potential, just lives we touch out there. So, anywhere.
Yeah, I think what I would like to see, and I think if I remember from the December presentation that Mayor-elect did, I think the two main services that are utilized at the Warrior Clinic are mental health and dental. Is that sound about right? I don't know.
Looks like medical, we have this in front of us. It says, so if you kind of like try to ignore the COVID, if you double this year's, it looks like we're between like 600 and 800 medical visits per year. And then behavioral health, like 400 to 900. And then dental is like, 40 to 70.
Okay.
So yeah, about equivalent medical and behavioral. About, sub 1,000, 100 to 1,000, or 500 to 1,000 of each that we're, meeting those medical needs and behavioral health needs in this one in-house.
So you guys can come up if you want to. If you guys like to, anybody? No?
If we have a question for him.
Well, I guess my question would be, how do you feel, we do have the Mayor-elect Clinic at Central, but how do you feel it being at Junction would better help that community? What's the difference between having one versus having two? How would that benefit? How do you feel having a second one at Junction would benefit even better than just having the one at?
Okay, can we have you come up just so that the public can hear you? Because they won't be able to hear you if you're not on a mic.
Thank you so much.
They are leaving you on your own. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe need new friends.
Mine is a lonely job, so that's the way it's supposed to be.
They all are, yes.
Well, I would say one of the most important, if there's a magic bullet in healthcare, in ambulatory healthcare, it's access. It's where the clinic is positioned is number one, and especially so for children. So if you tell a kid you've got to take a bus and get to the other place, and you're presenting with an issue, the chances are the kid won't land up at the other end. You know, we've all been kids, we've all brought up kids or are associated with kids. So access at the point of care is one of the most essential things for timely care. So I would answer your question, sorry, in a long-winded way, which is that access and a location is very, very key. And the familiarity that that access creates, kids tend to go into a place and test it out, may not come up with a presenting problem, test it out a second time, but once they get familiar with the place, they begin to trust the people who work there, the chances are they will access the care.
I'll say I definitely agree that mental health is a huge issue, and I want to support our students as much as we can. And I think it's incredible that they're servicing, 400 to 900 visits a year, and that's grant funded, and it's in school and available to them.
And if I could just throw this out, I think, Will, what you're saying is absolutely right, but I don't think it has to be either or. What you're saying is a need we have in our system that our system can address. And I go back to, and again, my memory's not always great, when we had for our previous board, whenever that was, a couple of years ago, we had the rationale and the thinking behind having a clinic in a school, and then why Central and why Junction. And I don't remember all the reasoning now, forgive me, but there were compelling reasons why it made sense to our board at that time. Now, we're different makeup now, and the community's different and all those things. I would suggest that we don't hastily make a decision one way or the other, right? We made a purposeful intent to add to Grand Junction High School space available, because that's my understanding has always been the district obligation is really to provide a space. Other than that, we don't run the operation, we don't have financial being in, we're just giving the space and probably some custodial help, my guess is, right? I don't know if we need to start from square one and go back to the rationale why these health clinics, forget in Mesa County, but because these are available in school districts around the state, correct?
The country.
Country, that's right. So it's nothing, new that we're doing. We've picked up on good practices that have been done, and we're seeing benefits out at Central. And so the question is, okay, is this something that would benefit Junction, Palisade, Fruita, but maybe we need to hear, and our public as well, to revisit the rationale and the thinking behind the concept of these clinics, and why, what the benefit we have data on the benefit to our kids out at Central. And when we talk about lanes, and I hear what you're saying, because that's been something we want to, I guess after hearing all that, my guess is like the previous board, we would come to the same conclusion that our lane is the benefit of our kids and their health and well-being, and if they're healthy and well-being, then we might minimize some of the other issues that we've been presented with today, the behavior issues and things like that. I think we're trying to get at root causes and not just symptoms. But again,
Is that what we should be doing? Or is that's something that parents and students should be in charge of to make this decision? I fear that having it right in the building, it's a way that the district says we approve of everything that's happening within the way that a different entity would do it. Whether it's Marillac or anybody else is irrelevant. It's just that there's an outside entity that is completely in charge of providing all of that. When it's housed within our building, it gives at least an assumption that we're saying, we know what's happening, we know how it's happening, we trust it, you should do this. And I think it takes away, and I mean, I'm hearing this from parents, that it takes away their autonomy to be able to make that choice outside the school building. And I think especially when it comes to more in-depth mental health things, that we're just, are we staying in our lane by doing that? Now, an option that was kind of discussed at one point was close proximity, but not housed under the same roof. So really close proximity where kids wouldn't have to go take a bus and go across town and, you know, go through a bunch of hoops to get there if that was their choice of facilities. But not being under our roof, so that, again, that assumption that the school district sanctions everything that's happening within something that we have no control over, and we don't really know.
Sure. And all I'm suggesting, I'm not dismissing any of
no,
that. I
no.
mean, there are legitimate concerns people have, and as you said, assumptions people are making, and sometimes not all the information they need to have is what I'm suggesting is we come back, forgive me, and go back through that process again. And once we hear all the information, we hear from the stakeholders, and we can ask the questions, then this board can decide this is our lane or it is not our lane. That's all I'm saying. Just like we did with the pool. You know, let's find out all the facts and the information. Yeah, this is a benefit to our kids or not.
And that seems to align directly with a planning grant, right?
Yeah, that's all I'm saying is we did that a number of years ago. It may be, well, it is time to, and maybe we're past time, hopefully not, to revisit that and the thinking and we can ask those questions that maybe we didn't ask back then, and because they're different questions today than 3-4 years ago.
I will say that based on where we are in construction on the Grand Junction High School project, we have to move quickly. We don't have another month or another 2 months or time to make that final decision.
Well, my
Later?
Excuse me?
Can the clinic be put in later?
I guess
If we
it
just
would
can't make a
depend on what kind of
decision fast
infrastructure was in that requirement.
Well, and that was my understanding and our understanding with the Grand Junction High plan, the building design, was to have the space, just like at Central, there was no predetermined space for that. That was created after we said, hey, there's a need there, let's find the space, and the district did. We tried to be proactive with the design of the new school to provide the space. And so the space is still gonna be there.
Which
That could be used, if the
yeah,
board
it's
decides
got-
not to bring the clinic, it could be used for something different, right?
they
And
have
that'll be a
other
consideration.
uses that
That's
they
right.
would like to use it.
That's right. And so those are things that we need to, you know, bring all those factors to the table so then we can, as a board, make a decision on what we feel now would be the best decision going forward, just as we did 3-4 years ago, whenever.
Right, but can Marillac, I mean, do you guys have to have a commitment of that space and us to decide in order to get your grant? Or, because what if the board decides to not move forward with it, then you just sit on the grant? Or, I mean, how does that work?
From the sounds of it, it sounds like what I'm hearing is you want a needs assessment repeated. The needs assessment was done the last time, and funnily enough, the first choice was Grand Junction High School. And the community committee that we were planning with, which included the school district, of course, was that there was no space. We did visit the school physically. And then they said Central was second in line as the results of the needs assessment as a high need for a health center. And we went there and the space worked out a little better. So that's how we landed. But I'm hearing you'd like a needs assessment conducted one more time.
Well, it sounds like there's questions that have risen over past months and so forth about, is there the need, right? And if there is, we need to make that, present that to the community, to the school community, to the broader community, to our board, so we can go ahead and move forward, just like we did with Central. Is that?
I think it's only fair to our community
Yeah.
because I think I mean, for lack of better terms, the political climate over the last couple of years has created a lot of concern for parents with what is happening with their kids inside the school building. I mean, there's things happening in school clinics in California that, as a parent, I mean, I just don't agree with, because I think as a parent, I'm the one who needs to make those decisions for my child. I just don't want us getting to that place, not saying that we would, but once the toothpaste is out of the tube, it's really hard to put it back in. And so I'm with you, Doug. I'd rather measure twice, cut once on this, and let our community weigh in again on what they feel, because I feel if we just put one in, I just feel like the conversation has changed enough over the last few years that it's something worth bringing the stakeholders along in the conversation.
It's well said.
But I also I also want the board to be aware that if we choose to not have the clinic in there, we do need to be mindful of an alternative. I don't want it to be a zero sum. It's just like, well, we don't have the clinic and that's it. We still need to figure out something that would provide mental health services and or other options for our students. Again, like Director Lima said, maybe it's not right under our roof, and we can talk with maybe the county. I know Commissioner Rowland's doing a bunch of stuff with mental health. I personally would like to see more mental health services at our elementary and middle school levels, so that then we mitigate issues as our kids get into high school, because those kids need to start learning at a younger age how to self-regulate, where to go find help and services. So I guess if it's not something we do at Junction, what are we as a district willing to look at that could provide broader services? Or even if we do decide to have it at Junction, I still think we need to look at what are ways that we could still get to more students to help provide that support for them. And so I know it's probably two different conversations, but I also don't want us to look at like, well, it's just a no on if that's the way the board goes, it's just a no on the clinic, but no alternative. Like I want us to be thinking about something that still supports our students and staff and our families. I just also want to keep at the forethought that we got to keep parents involved in what's going on with their students when our students are at schools. And I know per Colorado law, at age 12, there's a lot of things that change, but we need to do everything we can to make sure our parents are still involved in every aspect of those decisions with their students.
So I have to ask a question. There's a line here on the report that we have here, on the stats that we have. Year 2, 619 COVID tests or vax.
Vaccines.
COVID vaccines?
Yes.
Parental consent?
Yes.
And I hope you hear, total agreement in everything you said, because the landscape has changed, right, in our community, and as it has across the country. The needs are still there, right? There's still needs. There always have been. There always will be. And so we're looking at maybe it's starting from ground zero, so to speak, and do the needs assessment, or maybe it's a quicker version. I'm not sure. I don't want us to rush into some. I certainly want our decision to reflect what our needs are for our students, and that we bring our community along. Because if the worst thing we can do is go ahead with something that doesn't have the support, we're just setting up Marillac and the school and the district for failure if we don't bring people along to see, here are the needs, here's a way we feel we can meet the needs or not, and make an informed decision. And you're right, to base it on what we decided 3-4 years ago, it's changed now. And so I think to revisit that is a good idea.
So
and
one
that's
of
what
the
you
other
said.
things that I asked about is we have a property right across the street, right across on the other side of 5th Street. And would that be a possibility where it's not under our roof, but yet it would be extremely close access?
And safe access.
Very, yeah, of course. I mean, it would be walk across Fifth Street, which is, yeah, they walk across for
So,
class.
and is the question whether or not Marillac would be open to that, or is the question whether or not that building can meet the needs of the clinic? Because I don't know that they can answer that. I don't know if Clint or somebody else can answer that, whether or not that's a viable building
And
for that.
it might not be, but the property is still there. And I don't know what kind of, you know, I don't know what other access you may have to be able to, or if the district would even participate, if we continue to own the property, would we possibly participate in whatever it would take to either refurb part of that building? It wouldn't be the whole thing, but either refurb part of that building or put something else there to house the clinic.
So, but that would still be that would still be,
We'd just rent them the space essentially.
so, but, and that feels different than, so it's school property, school building, it feels different on that side of Fifth Street.
Yeah, because it's still separate, there's still a separation. It's not part of the school, it's really not even part of the campus. It's really just very close access across the street.
But it still is part of school.
You know what I would suggest? We're
It's just-
talking about
it's just
step
school.
20.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking about step 1. And step 1 is, let's bring the information forward, because we may decide not even to get to step 5, right? Let alone step 20 of refurbishing properties. It may be, hey, yeah, everything looks great. We still have some uncomfortable feelings perhaps with using the new high school, but we see the need, you know, but that's way down the road. What I'm suggesting is that we bring everybody up at the same pace, same speed, so we all get the same information at the same time. We can all be there to ask the questions, as opposed to, what's happened over time is people get, you know, information, and it's, you know, it's from different sources, and they hear different things, and so we want to bring everybody back about maybe why we have a clinic to begin with, and how is it working, and what does it mean for Junction, because what happens at Central may not have any bearing on Junction. You know, it's one, as I try to suggest with the professional development early release, not one size fits all, right? And maybe in this case it will, maybe it won't. But if we bring everybody along, then I think we can make an informed decision, and whatever that is, we can hopefully then bring our community along with that. Because obviously, no matter what we decide, there's going to be naysayers. And so if we have naysayers on both sides, then we're right in the middle.
Yeah, and I agree. And it gives our community time to come and give the board input as well.
Exactly.
So what kind of time, though, do we have based on the grants that you need to consider and based on where we are with construction?
I would say Marillac has absolutely no objections to doing a needs assessment with the school district. Maybe the time has come for us to do it and revisit it. It may show us same results, it may not, it may show us different. And as it was mentioned here, it could be in an elementary school instead of a high school. We are very open to that concept. Whatever helps the kids get ahead to where they need to go is our mission, along with yours. So we have no objections to that, and definitely the space and everything we can talk about later, because everything hinges on the need.
That's right.
What is the need telling you, right? And so, but we need to be able to apply for that grant for to conduct the needs assessment. It's a planning grant that you apply to the state, and it happens only once in so many years, and that's it. And then the window closes. And it's very difficult sometimes to find grants for very specific things. And here's the opportunity. It's right in front of us. So I would say that we have no objection, happy to go for the grant and conduct the needs assessment on a community-wide basis, not done by Marillac alone. That's not how we approached it the first time. That's not how we will approach it next time. So it'll be very community-based.
That would be great. And I know this is step 20, but if there was, if maybe it doesn't, if there's a mobile access piece to it, you know, maybe we could start, you know, then it can, we can be all over the community, and on the weekends it can be really accessible to, you know, people who need it. So anyways, that's step 20. So if you guys, if you need to apply for the grant for your needs analysis, I think that's something the board is, it sounds like that would be helpful for us. And I think it'd be good to just kind of reassess and bring the community along.
I just need to alert you, Brian, that we need a support letter for that.
Micah,
School district.
how are we with the construction piece? Because I know we needed to know about this like last month, so. Because you guys are at the point. So what would the extra costs be? What are we not doing by leaving it as basically a blank slate? Plumbing, electrical, what are we talking about?
What if you just what if you just still designed it with the idea of the clinic there, so everything would be basically plumbed and ready to go, but if it's not used, then you're not cutting into walls and doing things later.
Don't install the sinks
I
or
don't,
whatever.
is that a possibility?
Okay. But with the infrastructure in place, in case it goes one way or the other.
Which could be the case anyway.
I know.
So when, I wasn't aware, what does that mean that the plumbing has been changed? What does that mean? So I'm curious how that happened because I'm surprised that that decision was made because last I knew, I mean, we passed the board resolution to say we're moving forward with the clinic in 2018 or whenever that was. I didn't know that the plan had already changed and that we were incurring costs due to changing the plan.
It's an adult on the list, Carrie. It wasn't an absolute going into it. It was part of the ad alternate stuff. It was still, the final decision still had to be made,
So it was never.
which we're just kind of here.
Right. I don't know
because
that the community got
it's
to hear
today.
everything. So just to recap, there's been some plumbing changes from the original plan with the clinic, minimizing some of the water. But that was not a for sure plan set on the plan. It was an ad alternate. Is that correct? I'm just trying to
The clinic
reiterate for the
itself
public to hear.
is on the ad alternate list.
Okay.
The clinic
But
is.
how did if it wasn't the original design, we just changed it to minimize the plumbing. So a change occurred to minimize the plumbing away from the clinic. So that's in conflict.
it came down to making letting the committee make the decision or bringing it back to the board. And I thought it was a big enough decision that it should be brought back to the board.
Well, and the board's not ready to make a decision right now, so I think you guys, I mean, they're just gonna have to proceed with what they have, because we need more information before we say whether there's a clinic there or not.
I think I definitely want to know the cost difference between moving forward without it and then having to add it back in later.
Right, Marillac or whatever, that's your responsibility, right? They build out, we provide the walls, and then so what happened at Central? Did you guys need more water than at that time, or did the district put together the amount of utilities that you needed?
Okay, I just put it this way. Anything that can be moved is Marillac's responsibility. So anything that's fixed and bolted in came from the district.
Okay.
In the previous project.
And the district applied for a grant
To the Colorado Health Foundation.
for those capital improvements.
Okay,
At Central.
At Central, yes.
So they built it all out, they had it, all the casework, everything's in, so we moved in and brought everything with us to set up.
okay, so that could be a potential possibility down the road if there's gonna need extra funds to bring water or other utilities to that space. So, okay.
I just want to recap so I know what we're doing on the district. So the board, I know we're not voting, but y'all are comfortable with me writing a letter of support for them to apply for a planning grant. The planning grant, this is part of the planning grant, is doing a needs assessment. Like that's always been a part of the planning grant, so y'all would need to do that anyways. And then do you have an idea of, like in the past, how long did that take before you'd be able to bring some of that data back? Is that 6 months? Is it 3 months? Do you remember how long it took last time?
Well, the timing of all of this is what's a little difficult.
Yeah.
So the planning grant is due the end of January.
Okay.
The awards will come out, they'll notify you, but the clock starts, the contract, July 1st. So we've got this time between now and July. I mean, the planning is part of actually planning the services, but a needs assessment sounds like it needs to occur before that.
I think that's the problem that we face ourselves with right now, is you guys are up against the wall, and we're up against the wall time-wise for the construction piece.
I guess Brian's question was, if I got it right, is will the planning grant pay for the needs assessment?
Yes.
That's his question, I think. And that's,
Doing that, what kind of commitment do you have to have from the district?
Well, in the
To
planning
apply for that
just
grant.
the application itself, and I'm going based on what we did in 2019, and it looks very similar, is because it's a partnership collaboration. It talks about that the district or whoever that partner is committed to this. You know, yes, we're committed to this planning of looking at this project. So
Committed
that's
to considering it, not committed to it.
Right, because that's a whole separate, and operations is another application and award from the state for continuing your operations. This is what's called a planning to operations. So let's say a needs assessment was done, a decision was made, yes, to go forward with this, we would accept an award if we were awarded. If the decision was made, no, we're not going to go forward with this, we would most likely deny it. If they awarded it to us, we would have to step away from it.
So this first step is just what you said, we're asking to do the needs assessment, bring it back to us, and then we can gather other information from Central or wherever to help us make that decision. Is that what we're all talking about?
I think a needs assessment should probably be done between now and the next few months, yeah.
And so help me understand how that works exactly. I want to make sure I mean, there have been needs assessments done that, not in this particular realm, but they can become very skewed. They can not be very honest and give us a true, honest view of this community and what they want. So, you know, who are we asking? And how do we make sure that that's done in a very, very fair, unbiased approach?
I think the question, are you asking us to do the needs assessment, or are we gonna do that together? Right, and are we gonna select a partner or a vendor to do that needs assessment together? Versus Marillac picking the vendor and going out and doing it?
Gotcha. So we can participate in that piece of it to make sure that.
I think you did in the.
third party.
It was a third
First
party.
time that did it for us on our behalf, and the funding for that came from partners that sat around the table at that time, and our local foundation, the Western Colorado Community Foundation, put forth some funding to pay for that needs assessment, because they all thought it was very important too, to be able to have this done, to really see what does it have to say? What are the needs? They really looked at those high schools and those feeder schools. So they interviewed parents, staff at those schools, students at those schools. They were paper surveys, they were focus groups. So they did a lot of that work to really meet that community, both the Hispanic community and the non-Hispanic.
And we do have we have the
Yeah.
presentation, which
Yeah.
kind of summarizes it,
Yeah.
and then the whole.
Again,
I
that
think
was
what Director
2019.
Lima,
Things are very different.
I hear you correctly, which Director Lima is asking, which we all are, is that whatever vendor we choose to do this survey, we want to have confidence, we want the public to have confidence that it's legit, right? It's not right? We want to, and so that's where we're coming from. You want the same thing, right? We want information that everyone's not going to run and go crazy over.
And we are a federally qualified health center regulated by the Fed, so we have procurement rules we have to follow.
Okay.
Right, and we definitely collectively as partners choose a vendor we have, say, has the experience, the skills, a track record, good references, and is able to give a very objective view to us as to what we're looking for.
Sounds good. Thanks for coming tonight.
Thanks for hearing us out.
Our questions, we appreciate.
Thanks for what you do, and congratulations on your celebratory month.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, thank you. All right. Well, thank you, board, for your input. I think it's always good to just revisit things, especially if there's enough questions or concern, either way, and bring our community along with it, because I think I think the district's done a really good job in making strides to bring the community along, both with Grand Junction High School and other things, and I think it's just prudent of us to continue to do that in these decisions, so that the community, one, can understand it and buy into it, or just express whatever pros or cons that they feel about it. So, so thank you for discussing that. So policy, first reading, we just have the school calendar, some cleanup on some of these policies. Tonight's just the first reading, so if you have any questions on those, you can reach out to Jennifer Marsh or Tammy Arendt if you guys have any questions. Carrie, I don't think there was anything really big that came out of the policy committee on any of these to let the board know about, so. But then we'll vote on these in a couple of weeks, so. And then last but not least, is there any open board discussion, anything anybody wants to share? Or?
Yeah, if I could bring something up, and this is, for me, I can't speak for Will or Carrie or Angela, but, I've been reading in the paper lately about the pool business, and I certainly have appreciated President Heitz's working through that and her comments and working with the other entities. But sometimes the implication is in the paper that Andrea is doing this all kind of on rogue, right? That the rest of us aren't there. And I want the public to understand, who's ever listening, is that, you know, President Heights has done a really good job representing how our board feels about the pool. And so when the paper quotes it, it looks like she's doing her own thing. And we know you aren't, but I want the public to understand that how this board operates and our district operates is that we've had discussions and talks and meetings that you're representing what we all feel. And so I think you've done a really good job with that. And I just hope our media folks understand that because sometimes it's like you're getting some darts thrown at you that I don't think have been necessarily fair. If the dart comes, then we should all get the dart, and you've done a good job representing. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yes.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, I've made sure that every step of the way, I mean, I know we say this a lot just to each other, but we really are a team. And you know, if there is something especially as big as the pool, and I appreciate you guys, your confidence in me as I've moved forward, but I have very much made sure that whatever has been said is something I know that each one of the board members is on board with, and that we've been comfortable with, you know, in being a unified front. And so I do appreciate that. I'll take the darts for everybody else, but I do appreciate that because I think we've really done a lot of work together to make sure that we all are on the same page. And I know that we do spend a lot of time discussing things, whether it's here or an executive session, to make sure that as a board, each person feels heard and each person has been able to express their concerns, and that I want to make sure that I do represent, you know, all of us and not going rogue. So I'd imagine, you know, I do appreciate that because it does read a little like three people from the community sort of went off and started having conversations, and that was not the case. We were really actually all trying to get on the same page so we could move this forward for our community in what we ultimately need to do. So, thank you. Any other open board discussion, comments, or any agenda items that anybody needs?
We still have 2 more hours to.
Well,
We usually get out by
Bridget,
10.
Bridget can fill it up. Don't we have to pick some dates for something?
Yeah, we need to see if we can narrow down dates for the next, we need 2 community meetings to receive feedback from the charter school application for Mesa Valley Community School. One of those will be the board coffee on February 4th, I believe. But I sent out dates for the other ones, and we don't need all board members there. But the dates I submitted to you guys were the dates that the Harry Butler room's available. So I really need, you know, I've heard from 2 board members and that's all, but we really need to see what other dates might work for you guys so
This
that
is
we
for the
can.
coffee?
No,
It's just to.
Yeah.
Yeah, we just need.
And then we're doing the next
Doug and Carrie, I believe,
coffee.
Mr. Levinson and Dr. Schultes are doing the coffee.
Can that be combined with?
And that's on the 4th, but we need 2 separate community meetings.
Well, there was a.
Can't the coffee be a community meeting?
So are we going to go with the one on the 1st?
You guys said you guys could do.
I could do.
We do the first, yeah, that's.
Yeah, was that a Monday or a Wednesday?
It's a Wednesday.
Or, yeah. February 1st? Or Tuesday is fine, yes. Is it Wednesday? Yeah, I'm still good with that if Director Jones is, and we can just do like what Dr. Schultes and Director Lima did last time. You guys met a small group for what, an hour or so? And we can have public comment then, and then I think we had the majority of people come comment at the board coffee that Director Jones and I attended when it was Wildflower. So, do those work? So it'll just be within the same week, right? February 1st and February 4th, we'll have the 2 open meetings for Mesa Valley, just public comment? Okay.
What we'll need though is to be sure those members that are getting the feedback share at that next meeting on what is it, February 8th or something, we have our next, that work session. So, okay, and do you wish to start it at 5 or 6?
5 is,
5, okay.
yep, that's good, yep. People can come right from work. We'll make sure that we hang out in case people can't get here until 5:30, so.
So this sounds like a silly question, but the clock, the giant one over there in the corner, we don't want to mount it until y'all feel like that's a good add to the board meeting. So I don't, between you having to work it tonight, is that something that the board would like to see in future meetings? Or if not, we don't want to have them run power and all that.
I like it. Do we have to mount it?
Well, I
it
think the
better?
issue is that it's kind of out of the way. I don't know how well they could have seen it, and then we'd have to find a place every meeting because our meetings are set up differently. So we can put it right there next to you if you want.
I mean, I think if you,
Dr. Hill, I could always leave a table up there when the podium's back here at our business meetings.
As long as folks can see it, that's fine with me.
Will that work?
yeah, I mean, I think the one school board meeting that I saw this at from the other district, it was kind of right up on their dais so that it was really there.
So
Oh, maybe don't mount it yet until we,
yeah.
kind of
It sounds
figure
like
out-
y'all are okay with trying to use it in 2 weeks from now again.
I don't know, was it helpful to the presenters to kind of see it? Okay.
Was it? Because it was 35 minutes. I don't-
We secretly added 5 minutes to your presentation. Well,
Like a chain and put it right here.
he's gonna, who is?
Flav.
Yes. This is for all of us that grew up in the 90s. We know exactly what you're talking about, Will. All right. Well, thank you, board. Appreciate your time tonight, and thank you for everybody. I hope the 5 o'clock time was helpful for our staff and our community. And we're out of here just a little after 8. So, all right. Thank you, everybody. Have a good evening and Happy New Year.